Thank you for joining us. We're not beginning quite yet, but I want to remind any of you that is coming to please sign the attendance sheet in the back of the room to make sure we have your information. Thank you.
Good thing we have two alternates who are eager well, welcome to
Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for February 27th. We're glad to have you all here. I'm just going to put out one more reminder. Anyone attending, please sign the clipboard right over here that you are here. We're happy to have you. And we are going to go ahead and open and begin this meeting. We're going to start with an invocation, and Christopher is going to give that to us, Commissioner Howden, and a pledge by Deborah Mon.
Our beloved Father, we are very grateful for this beautiful day and that we're so lucky to live in such a beautiful part of the world where it's peaceful and quiet for the most part. We're very grateful for our neighbors and for the wonderful city staff that help us. We ask Thee to help us tonight, that we would think clearly and be able to express the feelings of our heart. We're so grateful for the help that we get. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and we have scheduled our unscheduled public appearance. This is not concerning the issues that we will be talking about today. It's any other information you would like to have the Planning Commission know, and you are welcome to come on up. Remember, it's not about what we're talking about today. Come on up to the microphone and state your name and address, and you would have 3 minutes to share that information with us. So we'd love to open that up for you right now. Okay, we know what you're going to say later, unless you have something. Yes, please.
I have something to say.
Sure.
I don't know how busy you all are. Oh, Shelley Beasley, corner of 4800 West, 11,000 North. Anybody who's not doing anything at about 3:12 in the afternoon, I would invite to walk from Manor Drive across 4800 West and see who makes it out alive. We have to do it every day for my granddaughter, to walk up to Manor to meet the bus. And coming back along 4800 West, that turn lane, people think that it's a continuous turn lane, even our Highlands finest. And somebody's going to get hit there. So, but anybody who wants to come and walk with me, so they'll know it, is welcome to join me. 312, Monday through Friday.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate those heads ups. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, we have presentations because we are swearing in 2 new Planning Commission alternates today. We're excited to have them with us, and we're going to turn the time over to the city for that. Thank you. Okay, please raise your right hand. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Utah, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you very much. We welcome you. Thank you. And we're going to turn the time over to Rob.
So we thought we might have to decide who was going to sit on here first, but I think we only have 4 Planning Commission members, so I think both of you are welcome to participate tonight as Planning Commission members. Normally we would we alternate, so if we only had one gone, we would toss a coin to see who was going on first, and we'd rotate every other time. But now we have 2 chairs waiting for you to sit in them.
And this is why we have alternates, because now we have a quorum.
Rob, did you want to say anything else?
Not on that, but I did want to touch on our Open and Public Meetings Act training. I was going to print off something and I forgot to do that. I will grab that and I'll give you a cheat sheet later, but I wanted to walk through the basic requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. I'm not going to try to take too long. We have a lot of people who are very interested in hearing one of the items and participating in that tonight, so I don't want to hold that discussion up. The Open and Public Meetings Act, it's the law that applies to how you all get to meet and talk about the city's business and decide the city's business. The policy of the Open and Public Meetings Act is that you must 2 things. Conduct your deliberations openly, so the discussions you have about the public's business needs to be conducted publicly. And you take your actions openly, meaning when you make a decision, whether that's a recommendation, which is what you'll be doing later tonight, whether that's a final decision on a subdivision plat or anything else, that action is made in the view of the public, who have the right to attend and be part of it. There's a lot of very detailed requirements about the Open Public Meetings Act. Fortunately, a lot of it's handled mostly by staff regarding notices, agendas, items of that nature. But there's a few items I'd like to touch on briefly. You can't take action on anything if it's not on an agenda. So sometimes, as we have at the beginning of the meeting, we have that unscheduled public appearance. Someone will come in with a concern they would like to raise and ask the commission's insight on. You can engage in that in a limited fashion, have a bit of a discussion, but you can't take any action. It's not listed on the agenda as something you're acting upon. So if someone came in and said, hey, what's the plan for this development over here? You know, can we have something about this conditional use or, you know, something off topic? You hear them out, but you can't say, well, we're going to do this about it. We say, well, very interested in that. Why don't we add that onto a future agenda? You talk with staff, we'll add that to your agenda. Happy to do so. The agendas have to be posted at least 24 hours in advance. We try to get it out on Thursdays to get a little bit more notice out. And for certain meetings, like tonight's meeting, when we have a public hearing, we give additional notice, 10 to 14 days in advance. Other than that, your meetings are always open, meaning the public can participate and record and watch. Sometimes you'll hold public hearings, which you will be holding tonight, which gets the public to actually get to talk to you, not just watch it. What isn't a meeting, and this actually might be tweaked a little bit under a new bill that's pending, but meetings are when a quorum of you are present. So you have 7 planning commission members, 4, a majority is what constitutes a quorum. If you meet to discuss anything, and there's 4 of you, you need to go through the whole agenda process, notice process, otherwise try to avoid talking about city's business. If you run into each other at the fling, in the supermarket or whatever, that's fine. If you want to come to a council meeting, that's also fine. What we would recommend that if you happen to know that there might be 4 of you at something, give staff a heads up. We can post a notice of quorum, just say, just so the public's aware, there might be a quorum of a public body at this meeting. They're not taking any action, there's nothing on the agenda. We can give the public a heads up. Again, if you all happen to show up, it's not that big of a deal. In terms of communications, you can hold electronic meetings where you can call in or video call in. We've done that a few times. That is part of a meeting, but sending an email to everyone. So say you have 4 of you, all of you on a group email, that is not considered a meeting. You can have those kinds of electronic communications without triggering the Meetings Act. However, those are public generally, so be aware of that. What I would give a little bit of caution, I don't think this ever has come up for Planning Commission, but sometimes people like to have communications electronically during a meeting. Remember that first thing you're supposed to do as part of a public body is to have your deliberations openly. If someone in the audience starts texting you about something on the agenda, trying to say, hey, consider this, or talk about this on there, you're not following the spirit of the law, which is having that discussion openly. Now, if you want to bring it up and say, you know what, I'm getting a text from so-and-so, and they'd like me to bring up this point, you can do that. However, it's also a little bit unfair if one person gets to talk to the Planning Commission when the rest of the public doesn't. You want to be fair in how you're dealing. So I generally say, while you're at the meeting, avoid having text, email, or side conversations because the public can't be involved in that discussion. They don't get to have that deliberation with you. Finally, we record all these meetings. That's why it's very important for the public when you come up to give their names. Materials that are handed out become part of the public record. We have minutes that have to get approved, which you will also be doing. We try to keep detailed records so people know what happened. And so when someone asks 20 years from now, why did this subdivision get approved and what were the conditions of approval, we actually have a record of that. It's been made public and they know, both so they can check on us and make sure we're doing things right and so that we actually know what happened. That's Open and Public Meetings Act in a nutshell. If you are meeting, let staff know, we'll hold it and we'll get the agenda out. If you want something added to an agenda, let us know. We'll add it to an agenda so you can talk about it and make a decision. Any questions about how that process should work or the Open Public Meetings Act generally? Yes.
So just a couple questions. First comment, thanks Rob, I appreciate this training. It's always very helpful and a good reminder. Our meeting we attended, the community meeting or the neighborhood meeting we attended last week, did we go through that process? Because we ended up having at least 4
I believe we
commissioners
actually
here.
posted notices of quorum for both council and planning commission because we anticipated that at the open house that many of you were at, that you might be there in attendance. We want to give the public a heads up that, just so they're aware, a full voting membership of the various public bodies could be in attendance. Not that you actually made any decisions at that meeting, but yes, we went through that process.
Perfect, thank you. And then the last question, we get before meetings occasionally emails from people in the community, concerned whomever. Those are public, they're available, but does that get posted out to the general public as a posting? Is there a way that other people are made aware of those, or would it be a request that they would have to get access to that?
It would be a request. So those are all public. So someone who sends in a comment, you know, we have several emails that came in about this item tonight, which is excellent. We always welcome the public to send in comments. Those aren't made, you know, we're not going to attach them as part of the minutes or say, here's all the comments. We will do that in very limited circumstances where it's like a survey or something, but generally we don't make those public. Someone can always ask for them, and we deliver them on request. The only time there's kind of an exception, sometimes I've known someone can't physically make it. They're sick, they're out of town, but they'd like to have their comment read as part of a meeting. And they'll say, you know, a commissioner is a friend, they say, hey, could you read this? I've seen it often say, this is from so-and-so. They'd like this comment read into the record. Just that way, when we have the minutes, we have everyone's names, they're also part of that. That's entirely appropriate. But if they don't specifically ask for it, those aren't typically part of the meeting record, though they are a city record. Right, any other questions?
Rob, just some clarification. When we've spoken about, like, let's just use this as an example. So if Wes and I, or Audrey and Tracy, when we go out to visit subdivisions or, you know, any part of the city to look at things, I thought that we had said restricted to 2, don't do 3.
So your quorum is 4, so 2 to 3 is fine, and often you'll do that just to expedite
casual
some discussions.
Yeah.
Or casual meetings. There's no issue with that. If you want to have 4 of you, we can host a site tour or a traveling visit, and sometimes we'll do that if you want to go say, let's go look at this property and see some issue with it. That's still considered a meeting. It's a little bit different. We don't record those, but we do have to post a notice saying, we're going to begin at this time, or we're going to be at this place so the public can attend. So those will be noticed, but if you're under 4, we don't post notices of that. So that does bring up a good point. Everything is a meeting, so site tours, traveling tours count. Retreats count. I believe we had a meeting at the mayor's house for the council, or the mayor's cabin, and we posted that, and if the member public wanted to show up at the mayor's cabin, they would be welcome to participate, because that was still a public meeting. But by and large, we don't have action items except here, because this is where the public expects us to be. Any other questions?
Just really quick.
Yes.
Because we have 2 new commissioners today, and they are going to be participating. Could you talk about, really quickly, administrative and legislative?
Yes, and we'll get on to that in maybe the next item, but I can give a little bit of an introduction. And this is also just good information for the public to know as well. It's one of the most important kind of fundamental principles of land use law, but also somewhat tricky to understand. In general, every action you have can be designated as either an administrative or legislative item. Legislative is, as you might expect, the legislation of something. You are creating policy. You are creating law. Now, oftentimes, Planning Commission doesn't get to just do that, but you get to make recommendations regarding it. So things of that nature, the lawmaking, is general plan updates, like tonight's item. It is a rezone, or the creation of a new zone, or the amendment of something that's in our development code. So we had our subdivision ordinance that got overhauled a couple of months ago. That was legislative. When I talk about something as legislative, that means you have a wide range of options to choose from. You can say, I like option A, B, C, all the way to Z, and then we can start counting numbers. We have a long range of options, and the public's comments, you should listen to them. You can make decisions based on what the public says. So if the public comes out in force against something or in favor of something, that's something for you to consider, and that can factor into your decision. You can decide based on policy, based on evidence, based on public comments. Those are all legislative things. So the thing we're doing tonight, public hearing on the general plan amendment for the road, that is a legislative item. So feel free to listen to the public, and in fact, I encourage you to listen to the public. That's why they're here. And you can make your decision based on, if you decide that's relevant, their thoughts and concerns and feelings. So that's legislative. We switch over to administrative. This is your role when you're deciding land use application. So someone has requested a decision regarding a piece of property. Typically, it's like a plat. That's the most common one you'll see. You're now the deciding authority for preliminary plats. You don't have that wide range of options. Your options are limited to say, did you check off everything in our code related to your property? All the zoning requirements, all the infrastructure requirements, all our standards. And if they say yes, we did all of those things, the commission must say yes. And that is the difference. Administrative, you are constrained, you are administering the law. The law is already set. All those policy decisions were made long ago. Administration is, okay, now we carry it out according to the letter of the law. Now, if we want to change the law, fantastic. Let's go back to that legislative realm. So tonight, we're setting that legislative realm because in the future, we're going to be implementing that law if we change it. Or we're going to be implementing the law as it currently is if we don't change it. And then, but for like a zoning thing, if you change the law, staff then implements it. So that's the main difference. Tonight's legislative. Public involvement, policy goals, all of that's relevant. On another night, when we're talking about a subdivision plat, that's where we get into very narrow scope of review and decision. Does that touch on that? Awesome. Okay, that's all I had on the training.
Thank you, Rob. We appreciate that. Okay, it looks like we need to talk about the minutes from the last meeting, and wondering if anyone has a approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Second.
Thank you. We'll vote.
I have a
Yes.
sorry. I was actually at that meeting, and I noticed when Liz Rice came up and talked, she was talking about being really careful developing near the wash. And at the end of her statement, it makes it sound as if she wants development near the wash, or she's encouraging development near the wash. So I don't know if they can adjust that a little bit, or if they want to ask her if that was her intent. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Were you aware of any wording that should be changed to better reflect?
Okay, so the last sentence.
Was it compared to the video of it?
I was here in person, and I just
Okay.
remember what she was saying, and she said she trusted Millhaven, but suggested adding stipulation that required the developer to build on lots near the wash. And I don't think that was what she was, yeah.
True.
What I remember adding to what Sherry's indicating is Liz had spoken up in favor of having Millhaven be the builder of the lots that were adjacent to the wash. That was her recommendation. Rather than just build against the lot, it was require Millhaven to be, if anybody was going to build next to the wash, make it be Millhaven, because she trusted Millhaven. That was the context that I remember. If that
Yeah, and I think she was just saying be careful just because of what happened in Washington County and Draper.
Thank you.
So do I need to amend my?
So do we need to amend those minutes, or?
If you would like to make a change, we can amend the minutes, and we can either do that and try to come up with good language now, or we could review it and maybe come up with a proposed tweak to that language for review next time. These don't have to get approved tonight necessarily, so if you have a concern and you'd like to continue it for next meeting, we can look at that and make sure we.
Is that something where we would contact her?
We would review the record, make sure that what was recorded reflects
Perfect.
what is being recorded in the minutes, if that makes sense. So if you'd like to continue it for us to do that and make sure we get that context correct, we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you. All right.
So do we make a motion to continue?
We technically still have a motion on the table. Do you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
withdraw it, or
I was just going to amend my motion that we just change that wording, because I recall what Andy and you had mentioned, that her intent was that the builder bringing it also built those. So if we can just change those minutes, then I would still ask that we amend it. You still second that?
Yeah, I'll still second.
And do you have what you
After
need
amended.
to change that?
Yeah, my suggestion, and you can approve this or not, but instead of saying the developer, that required the developer, you can say required Millhaven to build on those lots. Does
And I would just
that-
say request, not require, because I don't know if anybody can require that.
Sure.
Just requested.
Well,
Yep.
can I chime in here? This is really us interpreting what Liz was saying, and so my suggestion is I would personally prefer us to just continue it, compare the audio recording with the written record, and if necessary, rather than us sort of trying to assume what someone's intent was.
So I'll retract my motion and make another motion to postpone this and continue this until next time when city staff has had a chance to review the minutes and make the appropriate changes.
And I'll second that.
Okay, and we'll vote? Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up. We appreciate that. All right. So the next item on here is the city in January. The city. Sorry, I thought I had the microphone on. The city in January changed it so to make sure that the commissioners and the planning commission chair and vice chair were voted in at the time that coordinates when we get new ones, so that it all organizes a little better. We did it a little skewy last year. So we're going to go ahead and hold a vote for chair and vice chair. And does the city have a suggestion how? We've done the paper method last time.
However
It was
you'd like
confusing
it.
with 2 Chris's. That was a little confusing, but
You can nominate someone and see if they're fine with it. Also, chair and vice chair can serve as unlimited consecutive terms. It is whoever you want to pick to be your chair and vice chair.
okay. I will open it up for nominations for chair, and then we'll do vice chair.
So
Anyone?
oh, sorry.
Go
I just was going to suggest that we just did this recently, and I would suggest that we keep you as the chairperson, and I cannot remember who is it Chris as vice chair?
I am. Right.
You were gone when we voted you in.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone that seconds that or would like other nominations or anything you would like to say? Yes. Is there anyone else who would like to serve?
If there are no other nominations, I would like to second that. That you remain and Chris remain in position for now, till whenever the next one comes up,
Anyone opposed?
unless there's someone who has.
All right, then let's go ahead and vote with Audrey Moore as chair and Chris Howden as vice chair.
Correct. I vote yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. No paper and so easy. Thank you. All right, appreciate that. All right, so the next item will be our big item. And I'd like to turn the time. Are we going to do an open?
So yes, this will be a hearing. Typically how we do it is staff will present and then allow the public to have their hearing and comment and then ask questions from the commission either to staff or however you want to facilitate that discussion.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I will introduce the topic. Andy also will touch on several items, and some of these are more engineering-wise, which is beyond my expertise. I do want to appreciate, again, all of the public who has come out. I know this is a very important and sensitive issue for you, and I want to recognize that. As a staff, we have our recommendation, but we try to do the best from staff's perspective. We realize that there are differing perspectives, and we also realize those are incredibly valid and important, and we want you to listen to those as well. This is a proposed amendment to the city's general plan, specifically the map of the transportation network of the city, that will reclassify a portion of 4800 West from SR 92 up to 11200 from the current designation, which is 3-lane major collector, and the proposal to change it into a 5-lane arterial. So that'll be 2 southbound, 2 northbound center lane shoulders. We have a little bit of we have a lot of diagrams of what that would conceptually look like, which we'll get to in a little bit. But that's, in a nutshell, the proposal. SR 92 to 11200, becoming a 5-lane arterial. And staff recommends approval of this. And we'll get into reasons why staff is making that recommendation. Again, as I talked about earlier, this is a legislative item. So this is not one where staff says it checks all the boxes, so you have to do it. This is one where staff has looked at it, and in our maybe more technical side, we think this makes sense. But ultimately, this is a decision that is left to the policymakers. So you will be making a recommendation tonight, and then it goes on to the city council, and the council will make a final determination whether to do this, whether to do it in some modified form, or whether to not do it at all. And I will actually turn it right over to Andy to
Okay.
begin with the kind of engineering side.
So, for those of us that lived in the area for a while, this could be a little bit of a fun tour down through history, or it could be a little bit of a reminder of how quickly time flies, so to speak. And so, as a city and a planning commission, you know, our job is to look down the road, right? We're not just looking to today. We're looking to the future, and we're trying to do our best to estimate how we plan for the future. And so, and that's what we're really talking about tonight is this corridor and what's its future. So I thought that it might be kind of a little bit of a good exercise to look back at some of the major corridors in the city. Because, like I said, for those of us that have lived in the city for a little bit, it feels like just yesterday they rebuilt SR 92. And my dates on here, I didn't go back and research specific dates. I used that oh so awesome tool of Google Earth and just looked at the photos. And so the windows or the ranges are okay. In 2010 they were just starting the construction. By 2013 it was all done. So believe it or not, it's been somewhere around 10 or 11 years since SR 92 was completed. The major widening, the widening clear out to the freeway, and that feels like it's yesterday, but that was 10 years ago. Stepping back a little bit longer, somewhere between 1997 and 2003, SR 74, kind of the northern end of SR 74, or Alpine Highway, was widened, and that was through much of Highland and on into Alpine, into the roundabout in Alpine. Additionally, that same time period, 4800 West, the road we're going to talk about tonight, was widened as well. That is the one that maybe is a little more how time flies, because I remember that happening, and I remember observing the improvements going on, and I look and I say, wow, how could that be? And so the traffic study that we're looking at is a 2050 traffic study, which seems so far in the future. It seems 26 years in the future, except for when we flip that and look at the past, it doesn't seem so far in the future. So just a little look at features that all of us will recognize. And again, these are just images from Google. This is the intersection of SR 92 running east-west, or Timpanogos Highway on the photo, Alpine Highway, or SR 74 running north-south. That's the intersection of SR 92 and 74 30 years ago. 4 years after that, because what I really tried to do is say, okay, what was it 26 years ago? I can't find a photo that's exactly perfect on Google, but 26 years ago, approximately, Google had a photo from September of 1997. You see by that point, what was then Kohler's had gone in, and looks like Wells Fargo Bank was just starting to go in. And I remember, Kohler's being a brand new store and being great, because you didn't then have to go clear to one of our adjacent communities if you need to do a little shopping. But it again doesn't seem like that long ago. So then you fast forward to 2023, and you just jump forward 26 years, and here we are today. But all of those, improvements that we're talking about, we're done, to some extent, probably looking towards where we are today. So the last photo that I have for a little photo tour is stepping back to that time period before those two projects on SR 74 and Alpine Highway were done. It's tough to pick out from the overall photo on the left. It's just kind of a good benchmark of where we were in 1997, and then on the right is the corridor that we're looking at specifically. That's the 4800 West corridor between SR 92 and 11200 North. And shortly after that, like I said, in that 7-year window time, or 6-year window time, just based on the photos, is when the current improvements went in, which widened it in most areas to the 3-lane road that we have there today. So that was somewhere in, that 26 to maybe 22 to 26 years ago. I don't know exactly when, because I didn't do that much research. Just tried to step back a little bit, because sometimes it's helpful for us to look back and realize, like I said before, it doesn't seem that long ago. These improvements to me are still the new improvements on 4800 West and on Alpine Highway. They still feel new, but here we are, 26 years later. We're here now. From what was then, we're here now, just like we will be there in 2050, which is what we're going to talk about. And so it's important for us to remember and have that frame of mind that we're not just looking at today, but we're looking 25 years in the future and how we plan for that next quarter century. So Rob, I'll turn the time back over to you. Oh, one other slide. Sorry, I forgot that slide. We just wanted you to know, and the audience members to know, I think that, and I understand that I'm speculating when I share this information, but it feels a little, sometimes I think, like you could feel singled out. If you were members of the community on this road, why do you keep talking about 4800 West? Why aren't there other improvements going on to all these other areas that would also help share that traffic burden? So if we go back to the traffic study that UDOT did completed in 2021, it identified changes that were required to various facilities. It recommends some additional lanes on SR 92. It recommends additional lanes and movements at the Timpanogos Highway, Alpine Highway intersection. It recommends additional lanes and movements at 6000 West and Timpanogos Highway. Those are all major changes, on the level of things that we're talking about here tonight. It also recommends some minor changes at Highland Boulevard and at 6400 West intersections with Timpanogos Highway. All of those, to one extent or another, we're looking at and talking at with UDOT as a city. The city staff, and specifically myself and the mayor and the administrator, meet with UDOT on a quarterly basis, and we're routinely talking about these intersections and how UDOT's working to address these intersections. And so it doesn't change what we're here to talk about, but I want everyone to understand that we are trying to collectively plan for the traffic and travel needs of the city as a whole, and not just this one corridor. This corridor happens to be before us tonight, but it's not the only corridor that is being looked at for changes in widening.
So I wanted to get a little bit, maybe a question no one's asked, but why doesn't the city just do the improvement and just build it? And the answer is our general plan actually limits this. The reason I think it's very wise that cities are required, and I'm going to actually jump ahead, cities are required by state law to adopt a general plan, and one of the few things you have to have in a general plan, you can put in a lot of different things. One of the few things it says you must have is a circulation and transportation network study or plan that has to identify every arterial and collector in your city. Because a different section of the state law says once you adopt a general plan, you cannot build a road unless it conforms to that. And I think the policy behind that is to do this exact thing. The city can't just go out and build a 5-lane arterial in a neighborhood without going through the general plan amendment process and giving people notice this might come in. So that's why this is being presented as a general plan amendment. We're not talking about the design things yet. We have some very, we try to get some good concepts in. We're talking about, should this be redesignated so the city can even look at doing anything with this road in terms of making it a 5-lane arterial? And if the answer is no from the Planning Commission and Council, then staff will do not that. We can't force a change in here unless it meets the general plan. So you can see in there, and I highlight just the section that's relevant, 4800 West is marked in green on there, and the legend shows that as a 3-lane major collector. So it's been constructed as that. The proposal is to add those little red hash lines, so it changes it from a 5-lane arterial, or to a 5-lane arterial, proposed, meaning we'll plan to do that in the future. It's kind of, I find it interesting that that's the change that you're voting on tonight. It seems very minor. Obviously, it is not. This is a very important and significant change, that designation on the map. So a little bit through the previous history. I walked through this more in detail in the staff report, but this obviously came up before, and the Planning Commission looked at this before, 2 years ago, almost to the day, actually. The Planning Commission reviewed a previous proposal, that UDOT study that Andy was referencing, recommended turning the entirety of 4800 West from SR 92 up into Alpine, and then they had a separate study that said, and then Alpine up to the roundabout up there, to make all of that a 5-lane collector. And that was what was proposed and discussed 2 years ago with the Planning Commission and Council. It's the same general plan amendment to do a similar thing, but a bigger scope. The Planning Commission had a lot of comments from the public, listened to it, eventually voted, yes, make that change, but then added a caveat saying, but Council, there's a lot of concerns about safety and how this will impact people. Listen to the residents about that as you consider this recommendation. The Council did exactly that. It took your recommendation seriously. They held a meeting, heard your recommendation, heard from the public, continued it, got more information, and then voted to not proceed with that amendment and asked staff to redesign the plan to submit for a different type of lesser project, a smaller project that was focused just on the intersection. So why consider more? Why bring this back again? As we proceeded with what the council approved with the intersection to just the intersection, MAG and UDOT essentially we're still in communication with staff, said this is still a bad intersection. And I think sometimes when I say intersection, I think of just the 100 square feet or whatever it is that makes up just the intersection. When MAG and UDOT and traffic engineers look at it, they say the intersection consists of the things that feed into it. So what we had gotten approved from council was really limited to the intersection. It was changing a little bit of widening, adding a lane, very important, I think very necessary to do. When MAG and UDOT looked at it, said, that doesn't really solve the intersection, meaning how it's actually used and functions and things flow in and out of it. So when I talk about the intersection from that perspective, that's what I'm talking about. MAG said, we get that this is a problem, we get that you've approved this. Essentially, if you're going to solve this, solve it now, or don't. This is the kind of MAG is saying, we can do this is a problem, but we don't want the city to come back in 15 years and say, this still remained a problem that we knew was a problem and ask for money again. And it's not that this necessarily has to be done. MAG has more projects than it can fund. There's always additional projects at MAG. I shortened it to MAG. Mountain Land Association of Governments, a tri-county association of government that receives funding from the state and other sources to fund projects similar to this. They have more projects than they can fund. This one is important to them, that they've known that this has been an issue in Highland City and for the region. So they're saying, look at it and see if it makes sense to do the whole thing and solve the intersection. If not, we already have that project approved, which I'm going to outline a little bit here. As part of that council approval, we did work with UDOT. We got other improvements done. There's some new signage, there's some lighting transitions. They've helped. We actually saw a statistical change. Hales, the traffic engineer who did our study, looked at it and said, we actually saw incidents go down after 2022 when we made those changes. It didn't fix it, in Hale's opinion, but they said it did help. So here's what got approved in 2022. So you'll see, it might be a little bit grayed out on there, but it's not oriented north. So 4800 West is going to the right there. And you can see in there, there's a realignment. That left turn lane is bumped out a bit, and it creates that dead zone where it's not a lane, it's just empty space where they'll probably hash out. Trying to realign that through lane that comes from the south going north, so that actually lines up across the intersection. And so that the two left turns coming from the south going westbound don't stop trying to drive straight into 4800 West. So you can see there's that little kind of triangle that goes out. That's going to be just a dead lane trying to say, here's the left turn, so we can align those lanes. It adds a shoulder on the eastern side of 4800 West and realigns that, so there's an actual through road that connects straight through. So there's some other kind of minor improvements throughout the rest of it, but that's solving that intersection there. It realigns the lanes going through. It gets the lefts to kind of match up to each other and fixes that issue. And this is the proposal. So you can see the difference. This is a concept. We don't have, obviously, final engineered plans. It will only come once we get funding. But I oriented the same way, so you can see it is a much wider impact. And we actually have some videos and things. We want you to understand the impact this will have on the residents, because it might be easy to say 5-lane. I think everyone feels what a 5-lane road is, but that is the change. So this is what was approved. This is the proposal. You'll see one of the major changes on southbound. They want to add a 3rd lane going south, so that free right that doesn't have to stop actually has its own lane rather than trying to merge immediately into the other 2 lanes. So it ends up going 3 lanes south for a bit. It has 2 lanes from the 4800 that match up to the 2 on the south side, 2 lanes going north. You still have that 1 left turn lane with that dead zone in the middle. We still would propose shoulders and make that safer, so there's a bit of a distance there. This is, again, high level, but any questions on this? Because I don't want to skip past, because this is very important. There's more improvements that we'll talk about, but this is big.
I do have a question.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, as drivers, because we know that everyone heading on SR 92 to Lone Peak High School, you can hit the tourist car, because they always stop right at the corner instead of continuing through.
Yes.
That there's no signage there, so people understand that is a continue right, which is rare. And so that causes a lot of confusion, especially now that there is a crosswalk going across that's trying to protect people that are crossing that southbound. It is a bit confusing. And you can tell the out-of-towners immediately. So just in that aspect, with the 2 lanes turning left, that's a continuous left.
So
a continuous right towards
going southbound.
Yes.
Yes. So that's right turn stays continuous. What it'll do, so UDOT's actually proposing to acquire that property there
on the corner.
To expand that road, because they do want to make it so not only do you have the problem of people turning, stopping, and causing an issue, you have the people who continue through, but then there's already traffic going south, and they have to merge very suddenly. So they're trying to solve that. There'll be improvements there. I would definitely propose we add some better signage and visible, like, please don't stop, please continue through. And hopefully people will feel safer, because they'll have a dedicated lane just for them to turn right into to go southbound. So they don't have to try to merge with the other 2. A lot of people going to the high school to the south there. There's fewer merges that have to happen through this intersection. And I'll say, I'm not a traffic engineer, but from my limited discussions with Andy, my limited knowledge from my discussion with Andy, the whole point of traffic safety is to minimize the number of decisions you have to make in a short time. Because that's the risk, is you have to make multiple decisions when you're traveling in a car that's driving at 30 miles an hour or whatever it is. Every decision you make is more of a chance for something to go wrong, for an accident to happen. So we're trying to minimize that going south and north.
And because the canyon is such an invite to visitors and out-of-towners going on that particular road, it's really important to have some kind of signage so that people understand how it works.
The mayor will tell that he fought with UDOT to try to get much bigger signage on some directions, and UDOT says that they have their signs they like, and they ultimately control the road and the intersection, so we can only do so much in partnership with them. But I agree that would be helpful, I think. So any other questions on this?
Question, Rob and Andy.
Yes.
Is the problem being addressed primarily to accommodate traffic turning or traffic going through the intersections, or both? Or
I'll let Andy address, but I think the answer is both.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is all of the traffic contributes to the traffic issues there.
Yeah, that would have been my answer, is because we're really trying to address the collective. We're looking at 2 halves to this, right? But it's hard to separate one half from the other. We're looking at some of the safety concerns with the intersection, and the number one safety consideration is the fact that the northbound through lane has such a divergent movement through the intersection, and it causes a host of other problems. But collectively, we're trying to address the intersection capacity because the intersection has times where it functions, at a lower level, and because of capacity and backup, we often will find that drivers make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise make if the congestion wasn't there. Perhaps they jump lanes or aren't paying attention and find that the queue backs up quicker than they thought it was going to, and so we'll have a rear end collision because they weren't paying quite as enough attention as they should be. And we tend to pay a little more attention as we get closer to the intersection because we know our exposure for wrecks, but we relax a little bit when we're a little farther away, and so sometimes that leads to it because we've got a little longer queues and we don't pay attention. We have some rear end collisions there, and so to completely separate capacity and safety is almost impossible because the safest intersection would also be the one that functions at its most appropriate level.
Were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to follow up. Just from reading Hales's report and some of the other material, the congestion and the backup that you're referring to, would you say it's primarily because of the limited amount of space or the confusion with the right turning lanes, especially going that southbound on 4800 West? Does it get really backed up because the cars turning right either aren't getting over or they aren't efficiently making that turn and they're backing up all the cars waiting to go straight?
Really, you've got contributing factors on all the movements, right? At different hours and at different peaks, and so I don't think that that the congestion is limited to just one particular movement, if you will.
Can I ask one other question?
Yes.
And this
yes,
has
you
to
can
do
ask.
with
You can ask all the questions you want as a commission.
meetings long ago, because I was an alternate for a long time before I was in here too. And at a meeting, we were talking about the purchase of land of a ski resort going over the mountain, and then the threat of skiing traffic going up SR 92. I have not heard that brought up, and I'm wondering what you're aware of, because that would definitely impact this as well.
That is a great question.
Because whoever bought what was in Little Cottonwood or whatever, it goes over the mountain and they have it and they have their plans. And that's always been in my head going, oh, crumb, what's going to happen to SR 92? So I was just curious.
I don't have up-to-date knowledge on that, meaning I don't have the latest and greatest breaking news on that. I think that that's maybe settled down a little, we'll say it that way, but I don't want to represent that I have all the knowledge on that, because there still is a lot of debate. There's quite a bit of private holdings that are up there in the top of the Mineral Basin canyons, and so I don't know that that's gone away forever. I think that a lot of the focus has turned. If you've watched the news, there's been a lot of discussion about the Little Cottonwood canyons and stuff that way, and so I don't know. I think I almost feel like inappropriate to even answer that because I don't know that I'm really on the cutting edge. But nobody's come to us and said, "Hey, guess what? Next year we're gonna do this."
I was just thinking about it with our 50-year, our
our
we have to look ahead.
planning horizon.
That was a concern I had.
Well, I looked
but
into that yesterday.
You're right. Several years ago, there was a lot of discussion to that effect, and I don't know that it's gone away forever, but it doesn't seem to be as focused here on American Fork Canyon right now as some of the Little Cottonwood Canyon specifically.
And I had the same question, and I did as much digging yesterday as I could. and it looks like it's quieted down. It looks like it's been put to bed. Just a lot of, they're running into a lot of land use issues with state and federal lands, and I don't know, my eyes glazed over, but the high level idea I got was that it's not a thing anymore.
But for purposes of this discussion, it was not included in the survey, is that correct? So it's really not relevant to this particular survey that we're
As far as like that Hales didn't consider that.
Yeah,
No,
it was
he
not
didn't-
one of their
He
considerations.
didn't consider that. So what they do when they model traffic, Mountain Land Association of Governments maintains what they call a travel demand model, and what that's based on is they come to each of the cities every 4 years right now, although Mountain Land's contemplating coming even sooner and going to 2-year cycles. Because they come to all the cities and they say, okay, share with us your land use plans. And they don't use our current zoning, they use our land use plans. Because sometimes we have something that's in our land use plan that we might say, okay, we can see down the road under the right condition, we would approve a zone change to that. Maybe it's, we would approve something to go to commercial, you know. And so they take into account all of the city's planning documents, and then they balance that with the governor's office's projection for growth for the area. And so they have to do a little balancing so that they kind of hit the total numbers that the governor's office says, you know, that they project. And then that then becomes the tool that both Mountain Lands, UDOT use as their planning tool, but it also becomes the tool that all the traffic engineers draw off to look at their growth projections. So they use that travel demand model as kind of their base template to draw things from. So unless an element has been added to that travel demand model, or specifically we went to our traffic engineer and said, hey, we want you to consider, you know, if there was a ski resort up the canyon or a ski access up the canyon, something like that, the general baseline assumption is they go with that travel demand model, which reflects the current planning of all the cities and communities in the area. Like I said, that travel demand model is updated with routine frequency, but it's usually on about a 4-year cycle, and probably expediting in the future, more like a 2-year cycle. So I don't know if that gives you kind of a baseline window of how the traffic engineers make their assumptions and their calculations off for their growth.
Okay, a few more things to go through. I want to touch on another point. I didn't add a specific point to it as to why we're here. It's not just because Mag said, "Are you sure this is all you want to do?" It became because there were some assumptions and information that we had in 2022 regarding how we could improve this intersection that turned out to not work. Regarding some of the lighting things, some of the striping things didn't fix the issue as much as we thought it would. So it's not just, oh, we can get more money for this. It's, well, the goal from the Planning Commission Council, as staff heard it, was always do what you can to reduce the impact on residents as much as you can, but also make the intersection as safe as you can, which there's a little bit of a competition, obviously, because there's some huge impacts to some of the residents here that we can't mitigate if this is the route that the city decides to go. But what the options we had done as we reviewed it, and we'll get into the study a little bit, didn't solve the safety to the level that staff thought was acceptable. So that's why we've brought it back to here. So that gets into the traffic study. So one of the concerns that was raised last time was the last study that was done, that kind of funded the previous one, was a Tri-City study, so Lehigh, Alpine, and Highland. And there's a little bit of a concern of, well, was that funding so we can support Alpine's access through Highland, which is a significant concern. Alpine does exist. They can't go anywhere except through us. They're locked in that way. But that doesn't mean we need to push, as we'll often hear, and I think rightfully hear, doesn't mean that Highland Highland residents need to bear the brunt of all of the Alpine potential traffic issues. So we decided, okay, let's get a separate study, different consultant from the one who did the previous one, not funded by 3 cities and UDOT, but funded just by Highland. That says, for a Highland-centric study, what should we do here? What do you think should be done? And that was the study that we included in our report from Hales Engineering. And we didn't limit their scope in terms of what options to consider. I'm summarizing a lot of technical details, but their report essentially was they think the project should be done at some point to solve the capacity and safety issues on 4800 West. Whether that's now or 26 years in the future, the project at some point should be done. That at some point that intersection, as bad as it is, will continue to degrade. As they said, I think the study was currently operates at an acceptable level of service, but will only continue to get worse. It will not continue at that level of service as we continue. So these were their recommendations, and I'm summarizing a lot from the report. 4800 West be improved to a 5-lane arterial from SR 92 up to 11200 North. They looked at doing it shorter, trying to narrow that 5-lane down, back down to 3 at an earlier point. The intersection with Stony Brook, Snowflake, they said that causes an issue with how you, because again, it's those decision points. When you narrow a lane and people have to turn right at the same time, that causes safety issues. So they said, extend it past that, that gives a little more time. At 11200 North, the far right lane becomes a trap lane, meaning you're the white painted line. You get stuck, you have to turn right. So but it gets you far enough out of the intersection where traffic is lower, speeds are a little bit slower, that people can calm down and then say, okay, well, I guess I'm going right now, rather than trying to make that in the middle of the SR 92 intersection. 2 southbound lanes go through onto North County Boulevard to line with the 2 existing ones. 2 northbound lanes that I discussed. 2 left turns from SR 92 eastbound. So you're heading east on SR 92 going onto 4800 West. You keep the current. It's not actually painted. You have that little bit of like an extra pocket going right up 4800. That gets widened a little bit and becomes just a painted dedicated lane. And then there's the 3rd southbound lane on SR 92 as the acceleration lane for that continuous right. Other considerations, and this is a very short bullet point, but I do not want to make it seem like this is the shortest or least important one. In some ways, this might be the most important one. The whole point of this is to solve impacts to residents, but you have very competing impacts, and they're all very serious. If this is approved, the city will need to take property. So that is through the negotiation process that will come up eventually. Adjacent to the roadway, it's mostly on the eastern side, but it is a little bit of both. The city will have to acquire private property for a public use through the eminent domain process. It involves a lot of negotiation, sitting down with property owners, figuring out what works for them, but ultimately the city would be acquiring private property and using it for the roadway improvements. That means all those homes that were built with the road being in a very small location, we saw in that picture back in the day, suddenly become that much closer to a 5-lane arterial road. And we have a little bit of a video that kind of walks through what that can conceptually look like for each of those homes. But that is a major impact of this change. The road width will increase by a lot. People crossing the road going east-west will feel that. There is, on the other hand, in terms of what we hope are beneficial impacts for Highland residents, we hope that there will be increased safety and capacity in 4800 West with additional lanes and everything else that we have proposed. That will solve safety issues. There'll be fewer accidents, less congestion, less potential scares and threats to people driving in that area as a benefit. Again, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to our chair, this is a legislative decision, meaning policy-based. These are all impacts you can and should take into consideration on what you want to make your recommendation. This is our recommendation. It's from the staff report. We believe that this project scope approved in 2022 is not going to solve it, and we would recommend following Hales Engineers study. We reviewed it. We believe it's appropriate and reasonable and would recommend that the Planning Commission adopt this. However, you have a public hearing to go through. Ultimately, as a reminder, you are the recommending body. You make a recommendation, the council, I know, will take it seriously. The council will make the final decision on it. I'd like to walk through, if the commission's interested in seeing how this will look to the residents. Would you like, okay. Visual modeling.
And then you got the existing and the proposed. I don't know if you want to go through existing too.
You want to see existing versus proposed to see the scope of the impact?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what you're seeing here, Commission, is City commissioned a drone flight to map the area. So while the shapes are a little bit distorted, what the drone was really doing was doing a digital mapping so that the model that we're going to look at next would be accurate, dimensionally accurate, and so that the residents could be assured that what they see in the model is what the end product would actually look like. To the very extent to the extent possible with where we are today, right? We're just at a concept level, but we hired them to take and put this concept plan into 3D. So you in this video, you're seeing the baseline for what then becomes the model that we'll look at, the computer model that we'll look at in the next video. So you're just going again.
I'm just doing it again. So this is from the north going south, right?
Yep. We're at 11,200 and we're heading south.
So most of the impacts are on currently the left side, which is the eastern side of the road. Oh, that's a great suggestion. Sorry.
Thank you. That is a great solution. I apologize. Can you see a little better now? A little better? Okay.
Yeah, we can run it one more time if the commission's open to it. Okay. So again, we start at 11,200 on the north side and go southward. So and that's SR 92. Proposed 3D video.
I think it's the roadway improvement. It's a video. So this is that information that was gathered was taken along with the proposed design and put it into a computer model. And so the homes that you see are accurately placed with where the sidewalks would be. Few of the details, I don't know why they couldn't put a striped line to show the lanes being separated. They put solid lines, but the point of the video is not to be perfect to every detail as much as to show the relationship of the road and the homes and how the proposed road would look and feel adjacent to the existing structures. And you'll notice there's several fancy cars and other little fun things in the video that they tried to show people occupying the sidewalks and cars on the road, cars in the driveways.
That takes us kind of through the, with that, we'd be happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, we would recommend that you open this up for a public hearing. And if you'd like to formulate, sit on your questions and thoughts for a bit, have the public come and address you, and then ask more questions after, also open to that.
Commissioners, would you like to wait till after?
I just want to clarify something. So today we've got two, if you're heading northbound from the high school coming into Highland, there are 2 lanes to turn left onto SR 92 heading westbound.
Yes.
In the proposed plan, even though we've got like a couple of thousand, most of the volume of traffic it's about 1,000 coming down, 1,000 coming up, and about 1,000 heading eastbound and then south. So for that 1,000 or so, we're going to reduce it from 2 lanes down to 1 lane.
No, the proposal, if I understand correct, your question, the 2 left turn lanes that go from northbound SR 92 to westbound, northbound North County Boulevard to westbound SR 92 remains. So
Yes.
it still has 2 left turn
Okay,
lanes
it'll still have
after.
2 in it.
So the difference is, right now, if you're heading northbound on SR 92, the westernmost of the through lanes, or the 2 travel lanes, or what's sometimes called the inside lane, that one turns into what we would call a trap left turn. So today, if you look at, if you're driving that and you're in the inside lane, when you hit the signal, you're forced to turn left. So in the proposal, you would have 2 lefts and then 2 through lanes, and then the right turn lane. So you would make a proactive choice to get into both left turn lanes.
Yeah, thank
you. Being trapped.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I wanted to, just a short answer will suffice. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead. If all the commissioners are agreed, we're going to go ahead and open up a public meeting. I do need you, we want to hear from all of you, so please be really careful to keep it to 3 minutes. Also, because of past meetings, if someone has said what you have said, refer to them and say ditto, that you also feel that way, so that you can hit the other points you'd like to hit, and we have a chance to hear from you all. If you could state your name and address as you come in, and please make sure that you do speak into the microphone, because the recorder needs to be able to record it, and it is also on video. So we are now open for a public meeting hearing.
My name is Spencer Robinson. Most of you should have got an email from me already. I'm just going to read through that email real quick and then see if there's any questions I can answer from it. I'm trying to do a rebuttal in like 3 minutes compared to 45 minutes. A quick thing, I want you to know what you will not hear from me today. First, the safety and alignment issue, that's already been resolved, that's already been proposed, that's already been accepted, that's already been funded. So you won't hear any of that portion of it. The other thing you will not hear is who benefits from the widening. We all use each other's city streets. You know, for me driving to Salt Lake, I go through multiple cities. We all use them. If there is an undisputable evidence for the roadway to be widened, it should be widened. What I am going to go over today is the information from the agenda from before, from 2022 versus the agenda today. Now we have 2 traffic studies to compare to, which is awesome. Let's start off with the Hales study, page 16 of your agenda. It states, Hales Engineering determined that all studied intersections are currently operating at acceptable levels of service during the morning and evening peak hours. So right now, everything's functional, it's working and acceptable per the traffic engineering studies. So right now, we don't have a problem. So now we're trying to decide, are we going to have a problem by the time we hit 2050? Further down, they say the most significant queuing thing is basically ranged. It backs up from 450 feet to 575 feet, depending on the morning and evening peak hours, which is consistent with on-site observations. Us that live on there, we know it backs up approximately that far. That's the non-thing. UDOT has indicated, and Hales did the same thing. The problem with the intersection going through is people are not observant with the people going in front of them. They stop, they're on their phones, they're not paying attention. They slow it down, and then the signal gaps out after 3 seconds, which means it changes signals. That's the problem at the intersection as far as the southbound is. And that's both traffic studies came to that thing. Let's look some quick traffic counts from the intersection. So I sent you all a sheet. What I went through when I pulled the spreadsheet from what the staff did before in 2020 or 2022. Those counts go back from the 2020 traffic study, and I compared them to the 2024 study, which we have now. The time difference from 2020 to 2024, everyone, COVID changed how people drive. So if you look at the study and compare the two of them, you'll see the traffic went down about 20% from 2020 to 2024. The studies indicate that. If you look at the counts going through, turning right, turning left, whatever, traffic has gone down approximately 20% in those 4 years. A couple of key points from the traffic. PM traffic, 2/3 of the PM traffic of northbound, turning left, so turning west, that accounts for 2/3, and there's 705 cars during peak that turns left on those two lanes. While approximately 1/3, 339, goes straight through. But yet we're proposing another second lane going where only a third of it. So if you look at rational looking at it, if there's 2 lanes already going that way, we could have like a third of a lane going straight through and still suffice for the intersection for the amount of traffic going left. So it really is hard to say that we need 2 lanes going northbound when you look at the numbers. The other report says, it's kind of misleading. One report will say, because we have the need for the 2 lanes going north, then we have to have the 2 left lanes from west or from eastbound turning north into it. But if you look at the study on that, eastbound, PM, turning left, currently there's only 109 cars doing that. Projected from HALS is that 230 cars doing it, which is 110%, 111% increase in 50 years. But if you look at the population growth from the MAG study, and I sent you that email, there's only a 20% increase that can feed into here. So only 20% more of us can be going home. So I have a really hard time thinking, where did they get that? Or we're an increase 111%. The math just doesn't work. AM traffic, and that's what we're all concerned about. That's where you get the complaints from. That's what MAG gets complaints from. People waiting for light on their way to school. AM traffic, almost 70%, 1,136 of the AM traffic that goes south through that intersection, they come from the east, which makes sense. That's further down. It feeds more of the Alpine people. It's not coming from the north. It comes from the east. It makes that right-hand turn and goes down to the school. If you look at that number as far as how much, only 27% come from the intersection coming from the north. So 439 cars go through that intersection during peak time. HALS's estimation of 2050 is 570 cars coming from the north going through that intersection. The cool thing about that number is that was, if you go back to the 2020 number, that exactly matches what it was in 2020. So worst case from HALS is back to where we were 4 years ago. And so if you look at that logic, you're like, the worst case that we're going to be in 2050 is what we already have experienced back in 2024. And that's from the traffic study. That's not an emotional landowner sitting there saying, I don't want to lose more property. I don't want a busier road. These are the traffic counts from 4 years ago versus today. And so as a resident, it makes it really hard for me to say, yes, I think there is indisputable evidence that we need more lanes. The traffic studies don't show that. And so I encourage you to read through the studies, look at the counts, look at the stuff from before, but when you compare the 2 studies, worst case in 2050, we're like what we were 4 years ago. It's only that bad. And I'm sorry I took a little bit more than 3 minutes, but
You did your homework.
I needed to get through that, so I tried to go really fast. So if you ain't having, do you have any questions? That was really quick, really stuff. I tried to get it to you before so you could kind of look over it. Is there any? Yes.
I really appreciate what you did. We talked about this. Thank you for putting this together. Would you mind sitting down and coming back after others have had a chance to talk? Because I would like to hear, what do you want us to do? I heard why we shouldn't do what's proposed, but I'd like to hear what you'd like.
I
but
try
I'd
to
like
keep
give
this, I
everybody
tried to
else.
take my bias out of it.
Yeah.
Because as a landowner sitting there, you know what I'm gonna want to say.
Yep.
So I tried to just go based strictly on numbers and try to keep my opinion out of it. And
I'd
so
love
that's
to
what I've
hear
tried to
your
present tonight.
opinion, though, later.
Thanks.
Really do appreciate all that. Sorry.
Hi, my name's John Ort, 4828 West Joey Court. So I appreciate Rob giving us a retrospective of the amount of time from, I've been here since 2006. And I know that the amount of growth that we've had from then till now and what we can proceed to see in the future, I think those are two different things because we don't have enough new property that's going to happen in Alpine to drive that. And you asked Trent what maybe is a potential other opportunity is make North County Boulevard north of SR 92 one way, going north only. Make your Alpine Highway, make it a real 5-lane. Connect it down, let them turn left onto SR 92 and do your 2 lanes that head south on North County Boulevard. Make that we say the Alpine Highway is a 5-lane connector arterial already. It's not being used that way. It's only 2 lanes, one each direction. Make it a 5-lane. Make it 2 lanes each direction. Let them have that opportunity to turn and then head south with the 2 lanes and take that one property in the corner and leave everybody alone out of that one. Let's see. To me, gravel pit up by on Alpine. Give them another outlet to get out of there to get onto SR 92, which has already been upgraded. Let the give a couple of different options, but let's keep North County Boulevard to a narrow residential street as it is today, and maybe decrease the speed on it. Let's take it down to a 25 mile an hour, put in some speed humps, and get the noise down that's on that street. Because to me, that's one of the big problems we have right now, and this is going to make it even worse. So I run that all the time. I know that it's only an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening that we have the traffic congestion, but change the equation and structurally, let's make it a northbound or only a southbound. Do one of those two. And to me, I think we could change that whole intersection and do something strategically different with it. So, thanks.
Hello, I'm Stan Beasley. I live on the corner, 11027 North, 4800 West. I'm just here to point out the obvious. I mean, the pictures they showed of people jogging up and down the sidewalks and having conversations at the end of the driveway, that was really cute, but you can't have a conversation in your front yard in this neighborhood anymore. It's become entirely impossible. I haven't noticed a decrease in accidents in I-15 since they made it more lanes. It just made more traffic come through, and that's really all we're doing. The inevitability of paving over Highland to make it more convenient for the outlying cities to drive through there to get to wherever they're going. They're going to obliterate Highland entirely. They've almost done it already. All we're doing is decreasing property values, increasing traffic, making it entirely impossible to live in this intersection at all. I have kids that need to cross these roads to get to school, and it's already almost impossible to do it without injury. But making more lanes is just making it more convenient for everybody to drive through us to get where they're going.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us all here. I'm Chad Broadhead. I live at 4752 West Stony Brook Lane. I just really quickly kind of want to address a couple of things. We did this a while ago, and it seems like we're right back in the same spot. I think over the 26-year period from the last report, they figured there was a savings of, I think it was 8 seconds for a morning commute. And when you looked at that number, it seemed pretty desperate reach to try and make this work from a logical standpoint. I've looked at this now a ton. I actually sat behind going eastbound at the light there and watched a car accident occur. It had nothing to do with north and south. It was one of the worst accidents I've ever seen there. I was first on the scene, helped them out of their cars, made sure everybody was all right, called the police, all of that. It was kind of a crazy situation, but it had nothing to do with north and south. Zero. It was a churning accident. It was somebody coming from Cedar Hills going to American Forks Olive Garden. I mean, that's where we're at. The other thing is, if you look at the high school population, Lone Peak isn't growing more from Alpine. There's not more high school students. The demographics are changing pretty rapidly. It's used to be a lot of young people, a lot of high school kids, and that is changing. When they went through it, they thought they solved this problem for 2050. And really, again, what Spencer said, the numbers really don't align with what's happening in our community. And that's a really, it just puts that whole case study, it's just erroneous. And so when I look at that, it's really frustrating to see that we're not looking at actual reality here. We're just taking statistics that we think were possible, but we're not actually combining in high schools and other things that will impact that. Oh gosh, there's so much to say about this. Safety-wise, it's a mess. I mean, we've got a severely autistic child in the neighborhood, and she is actually a family member. She goes across 4800 West. It's a huge safety concern. I haven't seen anybody address crosswalks or anything further up the road. The light changes and everything like that were actually put forward by the people in the last community meetings. We proposed that. We called UDOT. We had other people from UDOT show up to these meetings. We hosted the council members in our house to go through these things. And it just seems like we're fighting this same thing over and over again. And it's not that we don't need something there, and I agree there has to be some solution presented, but I look at the smart car they put in the driveway there that would barely fit on that driveway, and it's kind of ridiculous. One of the driveways, they didn't even show a vehicle on it because the tail end of it would be in traffic. And so I look at that and I just kind of think that this needs to be pushed a little bit and kind of studied a little bit further. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And my name is Rochelle Broadhead, and I hope it's okay if I address you directly. But
Can you give your address, please?
My husband just 48. We're on Stony Brook. So by raise of hand, who has driven this road or who drives it daily? We've got one. We got two. So you guys daily are experiencing the commute.
Not daily.
Okay.
Frequently.
Frequently is great. By raise of hand, who lives on that east side of SR 92? I dare say all of us. All of us. Okay. And how many of you have run on that 5-lane highway? And how many of you enjoy running on that 5-lane highway? So why would I want a 5-lane highway and a 10-foot path on my property to be used towards this? I wouldn't, because no one's going to use it when we transpose from a 3 to a 5 on a traffic study that makes no sense when the population is decreasing. I think we were very clear, and I'm actually pretty disappointed in Andy and the way he proposed this, because when we last had our whole community input, I as a community member do not feel heard or any of our points taken seriously. And here we are again, and I didn't see any signage changing, road spray painting, and you can guarantee that every day I drove through that intersection, I looked. And unless you can show me when it was done, it has not been done. The other comment I'd like to make is I second all of what Spencer said. I think he has added some really great insights without being emotionally charged. I think he's good thoughts, and I would just highly recommend that if this is something you seriously think needs to be done, you think about the very small impact that it's going to have on actual Highland residents, because really what needs to happen is another additional road put into Alpine, and it needs to happen above our connector, above the gravel pit. And I mentioned that last time. Why wasn't that study done? And I have theories on why that's the case, that it hasn't been, but it's pushed every time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Shane Davenport. I'm at 11161 North, 4800 West. And I just have to say ditto to everybody that's come up before me, and how grateful I am for how prepared Spencer Robinson was to share with you those statistics. One more thing he shared with me was that close to 25%, just over 24% of the accidents that happen on that road are eastbound heading south. And when you look at all the statistics that he mentioned, nothing's really going to change between now and 2050. Also, just reiterate that the health study that says it's currently running at an acceptable level right now. Why are we making these changes right now when things are, as mentioned, the youth traffic going to Lone Peak is going to go down? There's not a lot of changes that have to happen. You asked, what are some of the things that we should do? What do we propose? Hell said in their study that after some minor improvements that were made actually dropped, caused improvements. I suggest that before we turn up people's lives, that before we start digging up people's yards and changing the whole makeup of this community, we're not just adding this road, we're going to change the makeup of this community. Before we do that, we look at that intersection and see what else we can do. What other minor changes can we do to drop the level of incidents that happen there and improve that intersection? There's got to be so much more that can be done. Before you make a vote, before you propose this, I hope that you've looked at, as Spencer mentioned, and lined up the stats that were given by MAG to what's being suggested and proposed. I think there's just a lot more that can be, a lot of little changes that can be done to continue what Health said is doing, improving this intersection.
Thank you.
It's good I didn't think of this ahead of time. My name's Deanna Pym. We live at 11185 North, 4800 West. I won't take 3 minutes because I'll be too nervous. But I ditto what everybody said because we clean up accidents from our yard, that stuff that gets left there. And trying to go visit minister, visit neighbors, how about that? Across the street, it's a little scary trying to get across, but you have to just be brave and adding more lanes out. I know I drive it every day. And I have to say, I do like that they have, the one lane going straight, if you're going up North County Boulevard, heading up to like Alpine area. When I used to come home and it was one lane, oh my goodness, I would be back down the road trying to get through. So when you added the 2 lanes turning left, that really helped. But it's really hard on the other side because you got to park further back so you don't get cut off by everybody turning to go towards the freeway, I got my directions right? So, but I do have to say, like, when you take an example of that Pleasant Grove freeway off-ramp, where they've done all that expansion, it is a mess, and I get in an accident almost every day. I think we need to propose people go back to driver's ed, slow down, maintain your lane. That's about the best thing I can come up with to try to not curse and road rage. Because you try to stay, but you still get cut off. So if we can prevent that, but yet I know we need a solution to kind of fix those lanes. I totally get that. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else?
My name is Trent Bogus. I reside at 4864 Joey Court, just 3 homes from the proposed highway, and just north of 11200 North. And I've lived there almost 11 years. I'm a real estate developer for the last 20 years. In fact, I've even used Ryan Hells in some of our projects. I don't understand why Highland City is even entertaining such a proposal. This clearly benefits Alpine, and it damages the Highland residents, specifically the 1,500 residents along 4800 West, going north of SR 92. So I just want to remind you that you represent Highland residents, not UDOT, not the MAG or whatever that is, the state government, not Alpine. This damages us. One way, I don't live right on 4800 West. Again, I'm 3 houses in, but the noise and traffic will damage the value of our homes. It's a diminution of value. And it was mentioned that it would benefit. No, it's a benefit to Alpine, and it's a diminution of value to the Highland residents. And so why am I bringing this up? Hopefully it doesn't get to this point, but in the eminent domain, that process, I don't know if you've ever had your personal property taken or a strip taking, or I think there probably have to be a complete taking on some of those homes. It is a terrible and it's an unfair process. I'm just warning my neighbors that the eminent domain process is terrible. The government, the UDOT, they come and they give you an appraisal and they say, take it. Oh, if you don't like that value, then you could go hire another appraiser. But most appraisers, most of their business is from city and state governments. So it's very difficult to find another appraiser, and then you get to go to court and fight over the value. So it's a very unfair process. So I just hope you can consider the residents in this process. It's eminent domain is unfair, and this is damaging. It's not benefiting. That term was used by the attorney. It's not benefiting the Highland residents, and that plays in a big part of the eminent domain and how appraisals appraise the takings. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name's Landon Bai. My address is 341 Allegheny Court. So I live in Alpine. So I'm just a couple streets north of where this proposed change would end. And like my neighbor said, as speaking as a citizen of Alpine, we don't want your help. I've come to all of these meetings. Alpine pushed their change in their policy through without alerting anybody. It was terrible. We all showed up to the meeting. They didn't want us to talk. They talked all legal jargon and said, you're not supposed to talk at this meeting. And we just raised our hands and started speaking as a group that lives on that street where they wanted to continue the 5 lanes through to the roundabout. We had to come to this meeting because I appreciate that Highland City actually alerts the neighborhoods, the people that are involved. And so we ended up coming to these meetings. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen one person in all the meetings that I've been to come up here and say that they think that it's a good idea. None of the Alpine people that have to drive to Lone Peak and get stuck in the long line, nobody has come up and said, boy, it would really help us if this road were widened. Nobody has said that. Not one person that I've been to all these meetings. Now, the Planning Commission and the different people say, yeah, it's a great suggestion. But not one person from the community that I'm aware of has ever come up to this microphone and said, let's do this. It would help us a lot. That speaks volumes to me. And so I'm just kind of the voice of reason. I appreciate Spencer and the work that he's done to kind of look at the numbers and try and stay out of it. I know he's definitely impacted being right on that street. I live a few houses in. It's a court. My kids driving to, they go to Skyridge. They don't go to Lone Peak, but they still would have to travel through that road, and Alpine following suit. If this goes through in Highland, more than likely Alpine's going to push for it to go to the roundabout as well. So I don't know what the solution is, but I would just tell you, leave it alone. If it takes people longer, then they'll go a different direction. They'll go around it. They'll go down Alpine Highway. I would make some improvements. It would be nice to line up that road coming north across Alpine Highway. It'd be nice to somehow line that up better, because I agree that that's problematic, the way that it kind of takes a little bend right there. But honestly, I think if you're talking to all the people that drive this every day, pull out their driveways, cross it, they all say leave it alone. I think that sounds reasonable. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
My name is George Bishop, and I live at 11093 North, 4800 West. I saw mentioned quite a few times the recommendation from the Hale study and all of these saying this, you need to fix this intersection. First of all, nothing you do is going to fix this intersection. The more major you make this intersection, the more problems you're going to have with accidents and stuff. It happens every time at a major intersection. You have in the morning and in the evening high school kids going to school. I know going out of my driveway, if I don't leave before 7:15, no high school kid will let me in line. I have to wait for a parent will come along, and usually an adult will make room for somebody to get out of the driveway. So again, you're not going to fix it. You can improve it, yes, but overhauling it in the recommendation that it made is not going to fix all of the problems. The northbound lane going through, that doesn't need to be a double lane. You don't need two turn lanes going from eastbound SR92 to go north. That turn lane never backs up. You might have 4 or 5 cars at the most. A few years ago when they redid the road, they put that turn lane in to go westbound on SR92. That never backs up. It's so long it comes back to my property. I'm the third house from the intersection. Typically, some people don't know it's a dedicated turn lane because there's a solid white line. They may think it's just the side of the road, I don't know. But why not make that an optional straight through and turn? And so it gets utilized better instead of having a 600 foot or whatever that road is, 500 feet, that gets used by, per light cycle, 2 or 3 cars, where it could be that you can do what you're trying to do with two southbound lanes going through. But you don't need a 5-lane road going north of that intersection. So I would hope you'll consider that. And the other thing is you can, when you take people's property, they do buy the property from them. What you don't do is give them anything for diminished property value. And that's what's happening at this intersection. I mean, poor Beasley's, and for crying out loud, they've been beat over the head how many times now? And this time, they're gonna take a pretty big hit. My neighbor across the street, same thing. They're so close to the road as it is that their property, their driveway is not even going to be usable. I'm set back far enough off the road that it's not going to bother me. But please consider the lives that you're affecting. And again, I would say improve what you can, but you don't need to do all of what you're proposing. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Peter Olson. I live on 4817 Jonathan Road, so I'm right on the corner of Jonathan and 4800. And I will agree with what's been said, and especially what Trent said, that the proposal here today is to fix an Alpine problem at the cost of Highland residents. Making it a 5-lane road, people will drive faster, making it less safe. Safety was already brought up, and I can promise it will become more of a problem. I've had cars end up in my front yard twice in the few years that I've lived here, and increasing the speeds on this road will cause more of a problem. It will also be more of a noise problem for everybody along this road that it affects. You know, watching the video, I don't think accurately showed how close the road is going to be to people's actual homes. Especially some of the neighbors here, it's going to ruin the value of their homes, and they will not get compensated. We have a bedroom that's less than 30 feet from the road. Widening it and making it so people drive faster is just going to make it worse. So, you know, think of safety, think of how it's going to affect the people of Highland to help the people in Alpine. Thanks.
Thank you.
I've seen you in a lot of years. Kurt Nelson, 4720 West Stony Brook Lane. Mine's going to come a little bit. I agree 100% with everything that's been said here, but I wished I had the confidence and the trust that if this gets pushed through, is it really going to stop there with the 5 lanes right there, or is it going to continue right on up to Alpine City? Like I say, I wished I had that confident trust that that really is kind of like getting your foot in the door and stopping. I really don't think that's going to happen. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
My name is Scott Pym. I live on 1185 North, 4800 West. Since we moved in, we've been in this house for about 8 years. I've seen about 5 or 6 cars actually in my front yard from kids getting in crashes. It's usually between 7:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the afternoon. I do work from home, so I see a lot of activity. I'm home almost every day, at least parts of the day. What I propose, everybody's talking about all the obstacles. I believe there's a lot of obstacles. But if you look at Canyon Road and you look at the gravel pit, if there was a way to make a belt route, I know it's a big, expensive project, but if they was able to make a belt route that went all the way up and over the top of the gravel pit, where there's no properties that they have to interfere and take away, and they came up into Alpine, this is an Alpine problem. It's all the kids that are coming from their schools, leaving and going. We usually have maybe around between 8 and 5, we have some traffic from some people that go to work, but most of the traffic's coming from the kids, college kids or high school kids. So if there was a way to do something, an event like that, to come right off of Canyon Road, right up over the top of the gravel pit, I think that's the idea that we should entertain. Maybe an expensive one, but I think it'll prevent more traffic into our city and help other people get in and out of Alpine, which is the real problem. So that's all.
Thank you very much.
My name is Amy Olson. I live at 4817 West Jonathan Road. We are the corner house. I just want to talk about the potential for damage caused by the noise pollution. Noise pollution is something that has been studied a lot recently and has some major negative effects on people. It increases your risk of cardiovascular events and disease. It increases your level of stress and mental health disorders. And if you put this 5-lane in, you are putting at risk the health, not just from a traffic standpoint, but from the noise that's going to be created for Highland residents. Also, as a mom of new drivers, I cannot imagine the speed of that road getting faster unless the city has budget money for us to have a police officer who parks in that area every day. Because the speed already is intense. Some days, especially as some of those high school kids are showing off, and if it increases anymore, the amount of accidents is going to increase as well.
Thank you. We're all Highland residents too, and we ditto that too.
Hello, I'm Ethan Budiman. I live at 4798 West, so right on that corner. I think it's safe to say I stand to lose the most, but that's not to say anybody here is losing any less. Everybody's going to be taking a hit on such a proposal. I'll echo the sentiment that everybody's so far proposed, that we're going to be losing a lot and gaining very little. It seems like a lot of the accidents are front to rear collisions in that accident data, and I encourage everybody to look through that data and really come to a sound conclusion based off of that. I think it would be nice to get a little bit more heads up on data and really dive deep into it, and so I want to support everybody here in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Okay. It looks like we're going to, and we don't have anyone online, correct? We're not having that open. Okay. All right. Then we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And we're going to open up the opportunity for planning commissioners to ask questions. They may even ask, I know we've got Spencer who wrote this letter. And if anyone had any questions on that, you're welcome to address him on that. I'd like to start out with a question, if that's all right. This is to the city. Did this report have anything to do with the new development south, the population growth south of Lone Peak going in between the corridor? Was that taken into account on this traffic report?
I can only answer in a general sense because Ryan wasn't able to be here tonight. We actually tried to schedule him, but he was out of town tonight. So in what I explained about the mountain land travel demand study, meaning that the way they do their travel demand projections, that travel demand model that Mountain Land maintains would take into account the city's Ridgeview land use. And so that would be included in the travel demand model projections. But whether there was anything else specific, I really can't answer. I didn't have that conversation with Ryan. I don't know that that's clear from the traffic study, and if it is, I'm not remembering it. So I think in a general sense, yes, because it would be in the baseline travel projections, but in a very specific sense, I don't know.
And just for a frame of reference, anyone could answer, how many units are going into that area? How many households? I know there's duplexes and homes, and do we know with the different builders how many residences?
Yes, we know.
689.
689. Sorry, we know the exact number. I didn't know off the top of my head the exact number.
I couldn't remember.
689 between, and there's various what they call product types. So you have there's larger kind of more traditional single family. There's smaller cottage lots, which are the smaller lots with single family, and then a lot of the townhomes and those types of things.
So that's 608 households.
689.
Or 689, I'm
Yes.
sorry. But none of that is needing to head necessarily into Alpine on a regular basis, but they will definitely be using it to get onto SR 92. They're going to be heading out to go to the highway, maybe up the canyon, but not necessarily any drive into Alpine, correct?
I think it's fair to say that, there's going to be some incidental trips to Alpine.
There's going to be friends,
friends,
yes,
whatever, but
not the heavy commuter traffic.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, north of SR 92, short of maybe like church and other activities that way that maybe draw you in that direction. Most of those trips are either for people who live there or people visiting friends, etc. You don't have a lot of trip generators up there, meaning you don't have a lot of commercial, that would draw you up there, etc. You have some. There's some employment in
It's
Alpine,
just probably not on commuter hours and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly some, but it's not, for the opposite end of the spectrum, it's not what you have out at Thanksgiving Point and Silicon Slopes where you have major employment centers or things like that. You have incidental trips going north, but most of those trips, as you've indicated, are probably either southbound into the Orem Provo area, or if they're heading to Salt Lake or to work in the morning, if they happen to work north or west, they're going on the 92.
Okay, then here's the other question that I had. with this study, during the same amount of time between the 2022 and now, this is 2023, the corridor has opened up, and I'm wondering how the corridor has affected traffic and or relieved in this, because that it really was to help also relieve the heavy impact in that area.
That is a great question, and I don't have a ready-made answer for you on that one, but that is actually a question that I will ask Ryan as you know, we look forward to him being at the council, because I think that's a great question for the city to know in general. You know, how has what's often called the East-West Corridor or Canal Boulevard, what burden has that removed from this intersection? I think that's a fantastic question.
I live 6 houses off Timpanogos Highway, past the Point Studio, or yeah, the Point Dance Studio. And I now use the corridor to do anything south. I don't use Timpanogos Highway like I did. So in my mind, I'm very curious. I know that that corridor is going to be way more heavily used once all those units are finished and people just trying to exit that development. But for now, that's my relief. So I was curious the impact on that.
I think it's fair to say that it has taken some traffic pressure off of this area, but to quantify that, what you're asking is to have that quantified. I don't know that I can quantify that, but I think you've accurately characterized that it has certainly done what it was intended to do in relieving some burden from this intersection and from the SR92 corridor.
So I've got several comments and a couple questions, and I have to be careful how I say this because I get really nervous when I talk too. But when I invite people over to my house, I'm responsible for their safety. I'm responsible that they have a handrail going to my front door. I've had my father-in-law fall down the stairs because I didn't have a handrail that should have been there. And I think, what value is it to me if I improve something at my house that's for somebody else? So I see Highland as my home. I've been in the area for over 50 years. It's very important to me. I appreciate all that you folks have said tonight, but I think we do bear some responsibility because we do have neighbors. We do have a responsibility for our home to make it safe for others. But I also look at it from the other aspect. I don't know why we need that much roads going north, as all of you described. I can't quite picture that either. I have not been able to. Last week in the meeting, a comment came up that we'd already made our decision. I'm still struggling to make my decision tonight. There's a lot of good information. There's some responsibility. There's some things that we need to do, but I'm really struggling with these decisions. So I really appreciate everybody's comments tonight. For the city staff, I do have a couple questions though. As I understand it, this intersection is already a 5-lane commuter on every one but the north one?
Yes, it is.
So, and as I understand it, we're only approving that piece to match the rest of the intersection. So I think at that meeting last week, the community meeting, we all decided it's safety that is our concern. We need to fix the alignment. That's my experience. I drive it at least once a week, and that's every time I hug that line and I swing wide so the person next to me doesn't hit me. And every time I have to, well, nearly every time I have to avoid someone hitting me. So I think we all agreed there is safety. We need to improve that. So back here's to my question. Can we put the necessary improvements to straighten those lanes out, align them as we understand is appropriate, without changing that to a 5-lane, or I'm not using the right term, but I think you know what I mean.
Yes, I'll answer a little bit and then I'll turn it over to Andy to answer the rest. So that is, I wanted to highlight, that's this proposal.
Yes.
This is the most, I'm trying to zoom in just to make it even, that's about the best I can do apparently. This is the most that can be done in terms of just the intersection, this was what was approved, and we have funding from this from MAG. So, wish I could rotate it so you could see it north, because that's how we all think. But I guess you all have to tilt your heads on it. But you can see, so here's your 2 left turn lanes coming north on
North County Boulevard.
North County Boulevard. Sorry, my mind went blank. So that's going. This is north is heading to your right on this. So these are the 2 lanes here. They turn left. This is the through lane, and as we all know, the through lane, if you go straight through, you end up on private property. So you have to bend it here. The proposal is what's already been funded is already going to be a taking of some property to expand it. You can see where the proposal is being pushed to the east to do a sidewalk here, sidewalk on here, an 8-foot shoulder, and then you have a new lane shifting it over to the east so that through one does line up. In order to make that match, because you have 2 left turn lanes here, you don't have 2 left turn lanes on the other side. So you have 1 left turn lane and then this dead lane here where it's just, it's striped out, so no one should be going into that. So that aligns the roadway going through north and south. It has a bit of an expansion. There's an 8-foot shoulder, and it curves in about 3 lots up. So it does impact, this already will impact all of these residents here. And this is what was already approved. So that's what I think you're talking about. This is the minimum to get the road aligned. It's approved. When I mentioned earlier, and this is more for, I guess, Andy to address, but when, as I understand traffic engineers to analyze things, when they say an intersection needs help, it's not just making sure lanes of road, it's how do people get in and out of it, which is the expanded consideration. So that's what Hales looked at and said, if you really want to fix this intersection, not just getting lanes aligned, here's what they proposed. So that's why it expanded to the 5 lanes. So that's, if I can get it to shift.
That was very helpful, so thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
A question. One of the suggestions that was brought up was by using one of the lanes as a multi-use, turn and continue straight. And I'm just curious, I want to know exactly which lane that gentleman was talking about. Who was saying that? I don't know. I'm sorry. Which one? Oh, sorry.
Can you come up to the mic so we can get it, just so we can all...
This one right here.
We need it on the mic just so we can hear it. Sorry. Let me make you stand up again. Dang it.
So the lane I'm talking about is the southbound 4800 west to turn west. That's a dedicated turn lane at this point. That's very underutilized. That could easily be a dual use lane.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We do love any good ideas, so thank you for sharing.
Can I ask a quick question? I know that the city meets with UDOT a lot. I think it was monthly, which is great. Who else has the city or UDOT and MAG met with and consulted with on this project besides, the hammer that sees every problem as a nail? I know that Hales Engineering, they did a traffic and transportation study, but they didn't do a holistic road safety study. And I know that's something that they offer. Was there any organization or anyone that looked into alternative mobility considerations or looking out for pedestrians, runners, cyclists, or just any other options, creative solutions? There's a lot of resources out there to address specifically this kind of problem without just taking a jackhammer to an intersection and doubling it in size. Do you know, did Hales consult with anyone else? Has anyone talked to anyone?
Sure, I'll answer that. And You asked a few questions there, so if I don't,
I'll remind you.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I don't answer the question you intended me to answer, it's not out of obstinance, it's just out of, trying to maybe answer the point. So what I think you were asking is beyond the study that Hales did to recommend how to process the vehicles most efficiently. Was there a study done to look at it through, for lack of a better word, a different set of eyes or a different perspective to say, what are potential other solutions to the problem? So, in that regard, I'll answer in that when it was requested, when we were going to talk about this again, that the city commissioned their own traffic study, so that we got our own recommendations and weren't taking the recommendations of an outside agency, if you will. All the traffic engineers, if you will, the one gentleman that spoke indicated he'd hired Ryan in the past. There are a limited number of traffic engineers, so in one way or another, they all end up doing work for UDOT. They all end up doing work for the cities. They all, there's only a handful of them that are in the area, and there's lots of problems. So they all end up working for all the agencies. But in this case, we went to Ryan and we said, "Okay, Ryan, what we want is you give us your recommendation for what it's going to take to fix the intersection." And that's what he came back with. I'm going to let him speak for himself at the council, but I believe that his look at things was probably constrained or somewhat limited by fix the vehicular problems that exist now. And so did he step back and look at some of the alternative technologies or other things, or reducing trips through other means? I would say likely he looked at the vehicular solutions, but I don't want to speak for him. But I think that's a reasonable assumption, because we went to him and said, tell us the best way to solve this problem, and so that's the best answer I can give you. Very unspecific, because I don't want to speak for Ryan and what all did you think of when you were doing this, but it's most likely he was looking at the vehicles and saying, how do I fix this vehicle problem?
If it's okay, Wes, are you asking about like an active transportation plan? Did we look at biking? Did we look at walking? Is that what your question is a little bit?
Not exactly, and I know that the city's done a good job with that on our own, but one of the things that Hales Engineering offers when they consult with cities is an actual roadway safety action plan, and it differs from the transportation and traffic plan that they did for this project, and they do it for other cities, and it tends to be a little more outside of the box in the solutions that they explore, and I just noticed in this study that it was pretty constrained to this. How do we solve this by reconstructing and reconfiguring the intersection? So that's why I was wondering. I do have other concerns. Would you like to hear them?
Yeah, keep going.
I did a lot. This type of issue has been something that I've been really interested in for 15 or so years. And this issue of how can cities stay small? How can they accommodate traffic without promoting traffic? How can they make the infrastructure more friendly to cyclists and pedestrians? And it's always been something that's been really, really fascinating to me. And so as I'm studying all the data and looking at the issue, and I keep coming back to the question, like, what what's the problem that we're trying to solve here? What's the imperative? I don't think it's public safety. You know, the crash data that Hales references from the Utah Department of Public Safety, it indicates that and I'm not sure why they just went back 5 years. That data is available all the way back to 2010. But over the last 14 years at that specific intersection, the congestion and the amount of, not the congestion, the amount of accidents has been constant. It's remained the same. There hasn't been a spike with growth. There hasn't been any kind of aberrations in that. The rates of incidents in that intersection, just to give you an idea, from 2012 to 2017, there were 78 crashes. So that's a 6-year block. And then from 2018 to 2023, there were 82 total crashes. So you have a difference of 4 crashes in those 2 6-year chunks. And with all of the rapid growth that's happened in the area, in that intervening 6 years, there still wasn't any significant change in the amount of accidents. In fact, 70% of the crashes are teenagers. And that's historically. That's improved the last 6 years. It's been 60% of crashes that are teenagers. So parents are doing something better with their teens. My teenager's been driving for 2 months, and I get shaky thinking about it. But this is the crash component of it, and the public safety component of it. It's teenagers that are distracted driving. There isn't a lot of indication that it's an inherently unsafe situation there. Even looking at the days of the week that the accidents happen, most of the accidents happen on Saturday. That's the one day of the week that more than any other day. And I'm just speaking of this specific intersection. When you look at the time of day, it's primarily in the 2 p.m. hour. That's the 1 hour in the day that sees, on average, the most accidents at that intersection. And you know, we all know what's happening in the 2 o'clock hour right there at Lone Peak High School. The second most, the other hour of the day that sees the most accidents is the 10 p.m. hour, which is probably a lot of younger people driving late at night. I don't know. But the fewest amount of accidents actually happen 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and then 10 a.m., and then 6 p.m. And those, out of all 24 hours, those are the fewest amount of crashes happen during that morning commute and the evening commute. Congestion means less, congestion and less traffic is just safer traffic. A little bit of congestion is really healthy. I don't think that we're addressing this issue because of public sentiment. I know sometimes we have matters that come to the city, and because there's overwhelming support from the residents, and I think this is very much not one of those cases. And honestly, I balked at these reports. I have zero confidence in any of these reports. There's little dispute among transportation researchers that expanding highway capacity increases vehicle use. It just does. It's universally, study after study, for decades. Studies have proven that expanding highways and intersections increases vehicle use. You see over and over this U curve, to where at the beginning you have all this congestion. You make a change, and that curve comes down and it clears up and everyone's feeling good. And that curve comes back up and you get the same amount of congestion, but more so. The problem becomes worse. It's a phenomenon that's, you know, it's referred to as induced demand. And it's kind of interesting in that it demonstrates a fundamental economic principle. Individuals tend to consume more of a good as the price of that good falls. And so in other words, wider highways increase traffic speeds, reduce the time and cost of driving, thereby inducing additional vehicle traffic. It's a supply-demand thing. The best way that I've heard it put is building more roads to prevent congestion is like a fat man loosening his belt to prevent obesity. You're not making anything trimmer and slimmer, you're just making more room to grow and to fill out that waistline. And so it's whenever, I just kind of laugh when I see these reports that expanding intersections and highways and stuff is going to improve congestion, and it doesn't. And I did give a serious look at all the data. I did try to take every part of the data and the reports seriously. But I think even as been pointed out, there's a lot of holes in the methodology and in the actual data that was collected, and then correlating that to the conclusions. It's the I don't know. This decision for me is pretty easy. I don't see anything compelling. I don't see anything compelling changing our general plan to accommodate the 5-lane arterial. And believe me, I'm all for I'm all for legislative changes that are unpopular, but, and I think it's even been mentioned, I think only when necessary, you know, only when there is a definite imperative. And I just don't see that imperative here. And I have a lot more things to say, but I'm not going. And they're positive, they're ideas, they're proactive things, but I'll hold off on that.
I was taking my notes. I'm like really against this. And it's well, the road, there's no doubt that if we make 5 lanes to the north, that it's going to have to go all the way to the circle at some point, the rotary up there, and then what? Turn into one single lane. That's going to really, then you know, Alpine's going to be in a mess also, because there's 2 lanes going into one at a rotary. Well, that's what we call them, Becky's, at a circle, traffic circle. Also, I would happily do a school assembly. Do they do those anymore, assemblies at the high school? And give them pictures and drawings and tell them where to turn left and right and how to stop and how to go and how to, all that, every single year for all the new students that come in. I mean, I think honestly, once their eyes are opened, a lot of them will be a little more, you know, alert and aware of the whole thing. I know this will change. I really feel this will change the feel of Highland from the whole east side. Although it's already you know, we're different. You know, I mean, I've been here over 30 years, so I had 2 lanes going out to the freeway, very happily closed in the winter when it snowed, but that's a different story. That's gone, and it's okay. We need to do things. There's no question we need to do things. But I was here at that meeting, the neighborhood meeting, and a few of us got together and sat down, and we came up with like a number of really good ideas. You know, we're talking, the stuff I'm hearing tonight have been more about accommodating drivers than it was the safety issues. And my issue is the safety. There are safety issues, but they can be addressed in a lot easier ways, I believe. I think it's kind of too soon. I don't think we've really delved into this. I mean, getting engineers' opinions are great, but they're looking at it from an engineer's perspective. I really think there's more we can do, a lot cheaper, and maybe it'll even cure the whole thing. And if not, it's, like I said, if and like you guys were saying, if traffic does lessen or the kids, you know, grow up and we don't get as many kids, whatever, we'll have less traffic on that. And then what we do this for? you know. But I really think this is huge to me. This is huge, to take people's property, and it's not even that, and I'm sorry, if there were, if there were a good reason, I'd say, you know, I mean, I've been totally, I live right off 92, and I hear cars and all this, I had 2 lanes, you know, when I moved here. But I get it, look at the traffic. But I kind of do that, if you build it, they will come thing too, though. But I just think it's too soon to take people's property. You know, I mean, and I said, and if there's a good reason for it, after we've done a few other things that are cheaper, easy signage, the arrows saying left turn only on the arrow, you know, places, and going back maybe a little further. Think just, or this lane turns into a left turn, or whatever it be. There's things we can do, I think, honestly, that'll be a lot cheaper, a lot easier, and it would really alleviate whatever problems we have right now before we jump into this huge, expensive thing. That's me.
So when I read the packet yesterday, I was really surprised. I hadn't been involved in any of this before, and very surprised to see a 5-lane road going through this neighborhood. It just seemed a bit overkill to me, but I wondered why it was being proposed. In my past experience with traffic engineers, I know it's their job to move traffic as quickly, efficiently, and safely as possible. That's their job. And I feel like it's the Planning Commission and the City Council's job to kind of balance that with quality of life, with what the residents' needs are as well. I took a drive, actually, I was in Salt Lake, and so I took the opportunity to drive down some roads on my way to a friend's house that were similar to North County Boulevard and SR 92, and I ended up on Fort Union and Union Park Avenue. And my friend actually lives off of Creek Road, which is a very busy road. It's an east-west corridor, but they've decided to keep it a major collector and not make it an arterial. And as you turn off of that arterial, Union Park Avenue, onto Creek Road, it very quickly narrows down to the major collector. And I was there during probably one of their busiest times today, which was around 3 o'clock when school was getting out. I saw many buses. The speed limit there is 25 miles per hour. And the city has decided, I think that's Cottonwood Heights possibly, they've decided to make the quality of life in that area the priority instead of just moving traffic efficiently and quickly. And I would tend to agree with that, especially in this area. And that's all I have.
So here's my 2 cents worth. I have the funny accent. You guys all know me. I live on 6000 West, and Jackie and I have lived here for almost 29 years. We love Highland, and we have this sort of contradiction where in our general plan and our stated objective, it's this very romantic, charming, bucolic, rural type of city. But that's not where we live. You know, we're bisected by SR 92, Alpine, you know, the east-west corridor. So the city's already been chopped up into these big roads. And so to me, even though I have a very sort of immediate reaction to this, because I'll tell you what I'm a fan of, and I am heavily biased, unfortunately, with regards to this, but I'll try and suspend that and say, if Highland wants to be efficient and, you know, move things around quickly, then we should have, you know, kind of the Salt Lake concept of a road that you can turn an ox wagon around in. And that's not necessarily bad, it's just an option. I come from a country that has chosen, and some of you that have traveled to other countries, you can also make choices to try and keep your towns and villages charming, but you can't have both. You can't efficiently move traffic around and have it look pretty. I mean, there's a big storm in a teacup about this massive freeway that they're going to do near Stonehenge. And the drawback with trying to keep a quaint, rural, charming city is you're going to have long queues or long lines of traffic, and there isn't a way to efficiently move thousands of cars. And my strong personal bias, I would prefer it, and I don't live in your neighborhood, but if on 6000 West, and Andy and I joke about this all the time, I would much rather have a squishy little road and the speed limit be 15 or something that would make everybody have a heart attack. I would personally prefer lots of speed bumps, or you call them speed tables. And I mean, at least the traffic folks say that's dangerous because it causes accidents, but I would welcome 10 or 15 Alpine cars losing their mufflers. And I'm not slamming, sorry, Mr. Alpine in the back there. But the same thing goes for me. You know, if I go down to Costco, they're like, oh, these blasted Highland people. You know, I'm sure they think that. But I wouldn't mind losing 15 or 20 mufflers, and then people will sort of go, oh, wait, hang on. Slow down when you see the yellow stripe line. And the snowplow thing, I love snow actually, but we can make a plan. Like, I can see a way where somehow, but then we need to be honest as citizens and say, hey, we can't expect the streets to be all plowed in 5 minutes like that, because it's going to take a lot longer. We might need to spend more money on manually doing some things if we do speed bumps and things to make it safe so that the snow is cleared appropriately. I drive this quite frequently actually, and I think it's a storm in a teacup. One thing where I would disagree with the general sentiment is I think the world of Andy and the city staff. I really do. And here's when prior to me sitting in the hot seat, I've always come to these meetings and thought, oh, these city staff, you know, they're so, because it's all aggravating to me. But as I've learned a little more about the process, I've realized they're also in a terribly awkward situation because they just get told, please solve the problem, but that's their job. So I would plead with you, be charitable in your assessment of the city staff, because they really don't have an angle either way. It's just saying, you give me a problem, here's what I think is the best solution, and then all the different constituents, you know, weigh in on it. So at least for, you know, my point of view, I think this is completely unnecessary. I actually don't even like I'm just used to take this with a pinch of salt. I'm used to driving in little towns and villages where there are these crazy switching lanes, and you just have to wake up and be alert. You can't do that if you're going 50 though, because that's what people do in a 30-mile-an-hour road. So you've got to decrease the speed limit, and then you can navigate wiggly roads and things. So at least for my fellow commissioners, I have a blatantly strong bias to lower the speed, put speed tables, or, Andy, I can't remember the name of it, but what's the concrete little curb things? You know how they have down by the American Heritage School? They put in some of those little concrete curbs with the little...
Like a raised island.
Yeah, raised island with a little flag thing. And of course people will bash into it because they're not paying attention. But that's my 2 cents.
And
Can
I
we
have to
lower
quickly-
the speed? Can we lower the speed? Can we actually get rid of one of the through lanes going north?
So we can't...
To even it out, right?
Right. Because SR 92, that's State Road 92, so we have no real control over that. Same with the southbound part of it. Northbound, 4800 West is the city, so we control speed on that, and we can do the improvements on there. The improvements that we have funded are with UDOT's permission in this intersection because it does have to be a partnership into that. So we can't change much of the lanes southbound. We can change things going north and try to influence UDOT to the extent we can.
So they like benevolent dictators, like it's our way or the highway. No pun.
That's
yeah, right.
I mean, I think Andy has more experience working with them directly. There are times they're very workable, and they are, you know, they do like to partner with cities and try to help. And sometimes, though, they decide that a project needs to go through. SR 92 is an example of that. I'm sure there were several who might have been surprised about it being improved the way it was, and that was the state decided we're going to do it. So we have had a lot of discussions. In fact, last time this came up, there were a lot of discussions with UDOT. We had, I think, the regional director here talking to the council about it. So we have influence, but no direct control.
Can I just quickly say, I had mentioned something about engineers doing the assessments and all that, and I was not speaking of the city people. I was speaking of like Hale and the other one.
Yeah,
I know, 'cause
right.
these guys are great. I mean, since I came on this this committee, I just learned a lot more respect for the city's processes. So I just want to make that clear.
One other thing that I would like to say really quick here is also kudos to the staff and for doing what we have asked. We asked for another traffic study. That's what we asked. We felt like we didn't have enough information and couldn't go through at that point. So we appreciate that, and especially having one centered for Highlands specific. And because I remember our complaint was, why are we bending over to take care of Alpine without even being asked? And, you know, we knew we had these issues. So I really do appreciate that. I do think there are some, I'm sorry, but 75 accidents is a lot of accidents. They're your kids, your families, that's a lot of accidents in 6 years. In 6 years. Right? And so I know my son was one of them. So I have 6 kids. I have 10 now, but 6. One of my biggest recommendations would be what we do in other places, use public transportation and don't let all 6 of my children have a car and drive to school. That would reduce a lot of issues. So I say go for the school bus, and they'll buy more buses when we need that demand. We pay a ton to the school district of our property taxes. So anyway, just a little thought, but as far as this intersection goes, I think it does need work. It is not safe. It is a touristy intersection because of the canyon. So that does make me worry. I worry when we have precipitation, I can't see the lines. I can't see the lines where to turn. And I live here and I've driven it for 15 years. So, well, they haven't had it as wide as it is now, but as long as it's been this. So I have a hard time turning east off of the boulevard onto SR 92 and trying to stay in my lane and seeing it. I also know it's a big running. There's lots of pedestrians trying to cross because people are running up the canyon and going to the golf course. I don't know why someone's willing to tolerate the noise running, but so I know that UDOT came up with that little island solution, trying to have there be a wait spot for pedestrians before they finish crossing on the south side, going from east-west. It scares me that they don't line up because you don't know that. And you have kids coming to games in the evening and families coming from other teams that are not familiar with it. This was one of the reasons UDOT had to change the freeway underpass by Thanksgiving Point. It was so skewy, no one knew where they were going before they had fixed that. So I know that we need to do something to make this safer, particularly on the south, east, and west side. Part of the problem with the lanes not lining up, I don't know how, unless we do multi-purpose some lanes, I'm trying to think how we can solve this with some better ideas without, I see the corners of each of those properties maybe being necessary to cut into, to expand that, to combine lanes and line them up correctly. But I don't think with lower speeds happening that there isn't a way that we, on that north end of 4800, why it needs to be so long. But I am not an engineer, clearly, and I see the purpose for that. I am not seeing that it has any of the traffic that the other 3 directions have. And so that's kind of where I'm at on this. I do know all these new developments are coming in and getting finished, and they are going to be using it heavily too, but probably not northbound. So I am stuck with the fact that I think there needs to be some land taken on with, maybe to straighten out the lanes. I think it's really important with the speed on SR92 to have arrows ahead of time painted on the street with solid lines on designated lanes that will be turning so that people can funnel those directions quicker. And the right turn lane only, so that people from out of state know this is a right turn lane only, no stop, right? There are some things I think that we can do to help mitigate some of this, and some of it has been done. I don't see it absolutely necessary to expand it, especially as far north as that. I'm also never gotten a great explanation why, when this was brought up last time, Alpine Highway is out as another expandable access to Alpine. Whether it needs to be 5 lanes or not, it can be better utilized. And if it needs to be widened, it's easier without invading private property. Well, used private property with a house close to the road. So I know may not be the time to dive into that, but I do think there are some other options.
Commissioner Moore, would you, or fellow commissioners, would you be opposed to me making a motion? Or would you like to have more discussion?
Discuss what your motion would be and we'll know.
My motion would be that I recommend denial of the amendment to the proposed general plan amendment based on the findings that it's unnecessary and a little too excessive. We do have some challenges, but I really feel, especially given that we're starting the process of doing our whole general plan review. And as we do surveys with citizens, like we kind of did with the alcohol thing, and the staff did an awesome job with that, if we're going to do a rehash of what is Highlands' objective, what do people want that live here, I mean, if 90% or 80% of the citizens say, no, we want big roads zooming around, I'll be sad, but then we need to build our city the way that citizens requested. And so to me, it just seems, I mean, it's wise that we're trying to get the MAGA funding, but to me, I would recommend denial of this until we go through a thorough process, and I surmise most of the citizens will still feel the same way. But that would be my motion if I was to make one.
And I would second it. I think it's also good to put this issue, right.
He would, he said. He said I would, I think.
To put this issue, we're about to completely overhaul and restructure the general plan, and this can easily wait and be something that is taken into consideration during that whole process, or at least it should wait. As the city and the professionals and council and everyone considers holistically the makeup of the general plan moving forward. This should be something that gets thrown into the mix during that process and not changed now. Make your motion.
I still have questions here, and I see my opinion differs greatly than the rest of the committee, which is fine. That's why we have a good committee. As I look at this, I'm still struggling with the reason why it's here is because someone identified a problem. And please remind me who brought it here. Obviously, it's not the sentiment of the positive people from the community saying we want to do it, because none of them are here, although none of them are ever here whenever we do this kind of stuff. It's only people in opposition. So I'm trying to take that into consideration. But can you remind us why we're here now?
I can give some general details, and feel free to jump in. Some of it is just, I think, general community knowledge that this is a bad intersection from anyone who has to drive through it. that should be looked at. I think that was kind of a general impetus of, we do a lot of road improvements over time, and this was one of the projects to look at. Then there was the kind of big study that the three cities, UDOT, all looked at, and it was specifically for, it wasn't specific to this intersection, it was for SR 92 and how just traffic circulated between the cities using SR 92, and it looked at all of the intersections, the major intersections along the way, and tried to identify which intersections were deficient, which intersections were working well, and went through that, and that raised, out of the various options, this as kind of the highest priority of the intersections. So that's when we went through the previous process, and then it was as the chair pointed out, it was denied, but with directions to staff to, we'll see if there's something else, if there is a funding available, should we do something else on top of what we have done, and that's where we got to here. So, have I missed anything in that?
I think the only thing that's additional is there is a project that's funded, and there are some changes that's going to happen. And so really you're at the point of saying, okay, if you're going to spend public money, sorry, I thought it was on. Thought people were hearing. I apologize. If you're going to spend public money on this project, are you going to fix all the problems with that public money you're going to spend? And that, if you want to back it up and say, why are we here again? It's because I know there's a lot of sentiment that not enough has been investigated and not enough has been fixed, and that may be right. I mean, there may be a lot of things that yet could be done, but we did attempt to coordinate with UDOT, and we did attempt to implement many of the suggestions that were raised and attempt to increase the efficiency and safety of the intersection. And yet, as was observed by Rob, I don't think anybody in here would say this intersection works dandy. This is just a cherry intersection, and it works perfect, right? And so really what we're back is we're taking one last look, because the chances that we're going to take another look before we do those improvements are minimal, right? At that point, we're going to go forward, we're going to put that into place, that's going to be the solution, and that'll be the solution for a time. I don't know what a time means. A time might mean forever. A time might mean a short period. But before you spend that money, are you spending it the best that it can be spent? Or do you do a little bit more and fix the solution long term? I mean, that's really, the question was asked are you do you go a little of the ways, or do you go all the ways? And how do you best spend that money and make those impacts? And so we got asked to take another look, and that's why we're here.
You mind, can I answer your question, Trent?
Please.
Why are we here? And I think this is really, really important, because you're sitting here going, what are we doing to our residents? So the reason we're here, we're coming into the money. 2 years ago, we got submitted with Mountain Land Association of Government. We have a project that's coming up for funding. Mountain Land Association of Government asked us, is there anything else that needs to be done at this intersection? So as we talked to the council, one of the things we're probably guilty of is being too transparent. Instead of just having it in a closed conversations, we've kind of made it open for the public. And so as the council's talked about this, we're going, okay, so let's go through what we have done. One thing that didn't come up, we did study what was going on in the gravel pit. We've had a full study that was done. Yeah. During the time, we've also had an active transportation. Wes, we've done a whole active transportation plan where we went and looked at all the bike lanes coming down Alpine Highway, what's going to be, where walkers, we've also looked, and we met with UDOT at this intersection. What has changed at this intersection is the timing, some of the striping, and the signs above the turn lanes are not as big as I'd like, because I keep drawing them bigger pictures, but they've put some different turn lane signs above the intersection. Now you're going, why are we here? Is because we're now coming in, the final list will be approved coming up this summer. They do not want us to come back. They're not going to approve us again in 6 to 10 years. This is our one time to look at this, and is this what we want to do, and is this the correct thing? All we're saying is, this is the plan. And so we just need to know, are we going to amend our transportation plan and do a different improvement where we have 2 lanes, or are we going to stick with what we were with 2 years ago, and that's the plan? And so I'm sorry we've kind of brought everyone back through this. We're just reconfirming, is this the plan, what we did 2 years ago, or is there any changes so we can make sure we get the funding? The funding comes up, we have to submit again in March. It does not get approved, it just gets back on the list saying, hey, they're asking to add extra money. You know, we've already got the approval for 2026 for the plan, our current plan to come into funding. The next plan's for 2028. But we have to get in that funding source. We just need to know, are we needing to do anything else along this corridor? If not, we're just going to submit and move forward with the 2026 plan. If there needs to be changes, we've got to have that in for the money. Now, why is Mountain Land Association of Governments, this is too expensive for the city. UDOT will fund the intersection or help with a little bit of the intersection, but it's Mountain Land Association of Governments. We need that money. We cannot do this intersection changes or anything that way. So the trend, I mean, we've went and tried to look to see, you know, other options to say, what can we do? And hopefully some of it has. It looks like the study has helped with that. By the way, our active transportation was done by Horrocks Engineering. We had a traffic calming that was done by another engineering firm that the city council took all last year about traffic calming. Avenue Consultants did the first one for UDOT, which is a different consulting firm. And then we went and hired Hells. So if you're, you know, there's been 4 different engineering firms that have kind of helped us throughout, and they're all 4 different. So just, you don't want to take, that's kind of how we got here.
But can I ask you, you were talking about the plan from either leaving it or getting this new plan. Can't we find something in between that we could still use the money, but not necessarily, there's like I was saying, there's so many things that will cost a little money that could add up, and we could have a new plan and still get the money.
So we have this, I've raised it up here, so there's more improvements than just shown here, but this is the primary improvement. So this is the plan that we have funding for. So MAG has approved this project. There'll be a little bit tweaks, you know, as you go through the design, there's always the final details. That'll get worked through, but this is the plan. Like, it's not going to substantially change from this unless we get the recommendation and the approval from council to do something different. So it is leave it at this plan, not as it currently is. It's leave it at what you're seeing on the screen or do more. And if you want to do something else, we'd have to do some other kind of study for that.
And just for clarification, you said that the plan that was approved, that straightens the intersection and does all those little things that you've mentioned were issues.
Well, the only major change in the intersection beyond this plan adds a, I believe it's 10-foot trail
Yes.
to the east side. But beyond the addition of the trail, the only thing that the intersection, or the only change at the intersection by this plan, is the lining up of the through lane. So the through lane that goes through to the north lines up by this plan rather than having the divergent movement that currently happens through the intersection. So that's the only real change to the intersection. There is a little more definition of, I guess, on the UDOT side or on the SR92 side, the right turn lane, the right turn lane from westbound SR92 to northbound 4800 is also painted and defined a little better. Right now it's kind of a de facto and it's painted, but other than that, you know, the only changes to the intersection are that lane alignment. And then going northbound of here, the plan just seeks to run the trail all the way to the roundabout in Alpine, and then it fills in any of the areas, and there's really only one area left where it's unfinished totally, and it fills that in. When I say unfinished, meaning not curb and gutter and things, and seeks to have 3 lanes all the way to the roundabout in Alpine with shoulders on each side, so the shoulders are available for the bikers and for a refuge area, but principally for kind of the bike lanes. So so it does kind of finish the corridor or make the corridor whole, so to speak. But right here specifically at the intersection, it just lines up that straight lane. It didn't add any additional lanes, didn't change any capacities, anything that way.
And we have the power to put the speed on this road.
I'm sorry?
And we have the power to put the speed limit on this road because it's 4,800.
The city controls basically, I mean, we have to coordinate with UDOT where we touch the signal
Mhm.
because, you know, that's just what
You have
we
to
need to do, and they
transition.
control
Yeah,
the signal and whatever. But outside of that coordination distance with UDOT, and they don't tell us what to do, but it would be foolish not to coordinate with them, you know, in that regard. But the city basically controls all the decisions on the corridor after you get north of SR 92. South of 92, anything on North County Boulevard, UDOT controls all the decisions there. When it comes to SR 92, they control all the decisions. The only thing we control is the northbound leg.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say thank you for your explanation, Mayor and Andy and Rob, for that. That was very helpful. For what I heard, this is our opportunity to make a change. If not, it'll be 10 years before we can make a change again. So if we're happy with what we see here now that's already approved from 2022, and things happen the way we've been described tonight, we're golden, we're good. If not, we'll be right back here talking the same thing at a later date, which is probably the best way to do it in some aspects, and maybe not as foresight as we hoped. The last question I have for staff is, if the committee declines or does not approve this, it still goes to city council, and the city council can override anything we say. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, from experience, the council will consider your recommendation pretty strongly. And we will, just so as process-wise, for those who might have been before it, we prepare another staff report similar to the one we prepared for Planning Commission, but we add a new section to it that essentially summarizes this meeting. So it includes your conversation, your decision. We'll summarize the issues raised by residents as part of that as well. So the council will have a summary of that. We'll try to include minutes or draft minutes at that point of this meeting so the council can read through all of that. Ultimately, they can override it. They can agree with it or not. It's up to the council. They can modify it, do whatever they wish, but they will have this information, and from experience, they do listen to what you do.
Maybe just to show you that they're listening, you have a current council member that's here right now. It's Ron Campbell. I know there's another one that's online that's listening. So they are interested in what your input is. They were interested in what the residents' input. So you've had council that's been monitoring this whole meeting. Just if you're wondering, they're just not home. But I kind of asked them maybe not to come up and try to speak with you. And I'm not trying to influence anything here. They're listening, and they're listening to the residents, but they are interested in your input and your thought process. So.
And I really appreciate that. And my intent behind saying that was simply for you folks out there, don't miss next week's meeting. That's important that you be here. Excuse me, 2 weeks, the 12th, right? The 12th, I misspoke. I still strongly believe that we should listen more to the professionals that's prepared this report, and that they do know what they're talking about. We'll see how good of a future they can tell, but I think that's all I've got.
I'd like to move that Wes switches off his telephone, please.
This is not my phone. I'm sorry, I've never heard this ringtone before.
Okay. I move that the Planning Commission recommend denial of the proposed general plan amendment based on the following findings. The studies showing that the volume of traffic is not going to increase in a material and substantial way, number one. Number two, the significant and disproportionate impact on the residents. And number three, the lack of perceived value to any of the Highland residents.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been seconded. We need to vote. Brent, yeah. Go ahead and say it.
I vote we do this. We do what he said. Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 And mine is yes. The motion carries. Thank you.
Just to clarify, that's a 5-1 vote, correct? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to communication items. Our future meeting is March 12th, which we are always invited to. That'll be at 7 o'clock. And March 19th is, I'm sorry, that's City Council. March 19th is City Council at 7 o'clock, and Planning Commission will be on the 26th of March at 7.
Just clarify that March 12th meeting, that's where this recommendation will go to the city council for a final decision. So please come to that meeting as well if you're able, or send your comments in before. If you want to contact the council as well, you have one here directly, and you have the mayor, but also on the city's website. Also, if you email council@highlandcity.org, it'll hit all of the city council as well. So if you want to send any other additional comments or thoughts, please feel free to do so. They will be eager to listen.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
A third.
Yay.
Yes.
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 Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your comments. And thank you, staff and mayor and councilor, for helping us and giving us insights. We appreciate it. All your help. This meeting's adjourned.